UFP, the United Federation of Podcasts.
Infinite diversity.
Live long and prosper, and welcome to Infinite Diversity, a Star Trek Universe podcast here on the United Federation of Podcast Network. I'm your host for today, Chrissie De Clerck-Szilagyi, and joining me are my fellow hosts, Justin Oser and Brandon Shemutala. Justin, how are you today?
Well, let's see. I would offer you congratulations for being promoted to first host, but first I'd like to present a list of grievances and requests. Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead. I'll just add them to the pile.
All right. My bathroom, you may know it as a fresher, is broken. I really want you to come over and do something about that. No, that's not really a responsibility. So I'm doing pretty well. I mean, you are the kind of main host of this episode, but it's not really a position or a rank change, is it? No. But
this is true.
But yeah, I'm good. Pretty good. That joke may have worked better when I was preparing it for myself than it did on the episode. So, oh well. Sometimes
I liked it. It was good.
Okay.
It was good. Brandon, how are you?
I'm doing really good, but I'm wondering if we could just take a second so I can go and talk to you privately in this glass room where everybody can hear us at our normal speaking volume anyways, and I can hear them at their normal speaking volume through it anyways.
It's muffled a little bit.
Yeah, that was odd. That's all right. Well, good. And I'm doing well. I feel like I'm putting my students through one of those Takal and Ket as I'm reading their final projects this week. And
ooh, tell us how you're assailing their character.
Oh dear.
Thankfully, I'm not doing that. Although some of them,
she doesn't have to do much. She just puts her Facebook accounts up on the screen there and says, "I don't even have to say anything."
Right.
Nice.
No, my students are turning in quite good work. I'm not gonna.
Oh, good.
Just making a joke there. Don't want anybody to think otherwise of me. Okay, anyway. So, also joined with us today is James Swallow, who is the author of many, many, many books. Our listeners will know him probably best from the Star Trek universe work, but he's also written a great deal for other franchises, such as Doctor Who and Stargate, and as my husband made a point of saying, I had to mention Warhammer and the Horus Heresy in that universe. So welcome to Infinite Diversity, James.
Thank you, everybody. It's great to be here. And in the spirit of the episode we're talking about, I will be discussing everything in the realm of absolute candor. No lying, no fibbing.
Awesome.
Good.
Excellent.
Nice.
That's what we shoot for here.
I think we should also acknowledge, James, that you had some Voyager writing credits as well, right?
Well, that's I sold a couple of story premises to Star Trek Voyager, which were eventually turned into 2 episodes.
Yeah, which is cool. I think it was 1 and Memorial is what they ended up being, but yeah.
That is correct.
Yeah.
We should have you on to discuss Memorial someday, because that's an episode that's got a lot to dive into and discuss.
Yeah.
I would love to do that.
Yeah, we should.
I think last time it was on the Sci-Fi Channel over here, I ended up doing kind of an impromptu Twitter kind of follow-along thing that encouraged me to go back and dig out all of my old paperwork. This is from like 1996, right? So it's a long time ago for me now.
The thing about Voyager, like they've got a lot of great episodes where, like Tuvix is one of them as well, where it's like, everybody's got an opinion on this episode. Mm-hmm. And there's no real right answers, right? Everybody kind of feels very passionately about one way or the other. But after all this discourse years and years later, it's like Voyager was great at having those episodes where you could have multiple sides in an argument, and they're just rich for debate and discussion in Star Trek. And that's what I love about them being out in the Delta Quadrant and not really having the resources and the options.
Yeah.
I've always felt that Janeway was closest to Kirk in terms of being, kind of out there on their own, sort of having to make the decisions on the spot rather than kind of calling back to Starfleet and asking for guidance.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've got just a little bit of news this week. A couple of things here. The first one, we have confirmation from Evan Evangoria saying that Picard is going to begin filming again in January. So that's good. He also says that it would be fun if Elnor got into a little bit of a sparring match with Worf, and hopes he mentioned something in this interview that I have wanted to see for a long time, which is, can we just get a little Ian McKellen cameo at least, please? So.
Yeah. This was interesting because I saw this go by and they said, oh, Evan who played Elnor in Picard is confirming it's going to be filming in January, and Jonathan Frakes had mentioned something about that in their Trek Movies interview with him in September, and I was like, what? I totally missed that. So, but anyway, I think this is cool because Discovery Season 4 is filming now from November until probably sometime in the spring. Picard Season 2 is going to start in January. We think Strange New World Season 1 is going to start in February. So I think there's going to be 3 shows that'll be filming at the same time, which has never happened before. It's very, very cool just to think about.
Plus, we've got what is it? I think they've already been working.
They've been working
on
on
season
Prodigy
2 of. They're working on Prodigy, and I think they've been working hard on season 2 of Lord X.
Yeah.
So if we had to guess, I mean, like first of all, this is great, but secondly, where's Section 31? Okay, but we've got probably what's going to happen is we'll have Prodigy, then we'll have Discovery, then we'll have Lower Decks, then we'll have Picard, and then we'll have Strange New Worlds, I would guess.
Maybe.
Coming up next year.
I would think Prodigy would be next because they have been working on it for a while. It's the one that hasn't premiered yet. For Section 31, Brandon, I think that they're not going to make any further announcements about that until we see where Georgiou is going in this season of Discovery, because that will inform what happens in the Section 31 show, because of course there's been all this speculation we've talked about, well, maybe she'll go back to the 23rd century, maybe it'll be in the 32nd century, maybe it'll be something totally different, so I think once season 3 is done, or Georgiou is in her wherever she's going to be, then I think we'll hear about that. But as far as we know, it hasn't filmed anything yet, so
I think we'll find out some more next week.
No?
Oh, yeah, you will.
Oh.
Well,
I'm not going to say any more.
I know,
than
but
that.
I did see Georgiou's important in next week's, but I know you know more than we do. Awesome. But yeah, anyway.
I've heard some rumors, some of the stuff I've heard is confirmed and some of it isn't, and there's interesting stuff coming up. We're gonna interesting times for Philippa Georgiou coming up.
Well, James, don't say anything to this. Don't say anything to this till next week. So I've already speculated that I think Georgiou is currently a hologram replaced by David Cronenberg. Now, say nothing. Say nothing. I said that in like the last episode or 2 episodes ago or something like that.
Yeah.
I love that theory. That's great.
Awesome. Yeah.
Ooh.
So anyway, but the other part with Elnor and Worf sparring, I would like to see that as well. Why not?
That would be fun.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Let's see. The second piece of news has to do with Star Trek literary universe. 2 of the largest publishing companies in the United States are going to come together. Random House is purchasing Simon & Schuster. Simon & Schuster was part, or after this is over, it will have been part of the CBS Viacom family, I guess you could say, that giant monstrosity that it is. And it's going over, they're selling to Random House. Probably not going to change too much. I have a little bit of experience in the book industry. And they probably will keep the Simon & Schuster imprint. They'll just have a different overarching control setup. So that didn't make sense.
Well, I mean, if only we had somebody on this podcast who might have a little bit more experience with books and Simon & Schuster.
Yeah, what do you
James?
think about
Good
what do you think about this news, James?
Good point.
And I have also worked for Random House as well.
Oh, really?
Briefly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if this is a good thing or not. I have to be honest. It's too early to tell. But there is a lot of potential here for major disruption. If you look at the behavior of Random House when they took over Penguin, there was a lot of projects were cancelled. A lot of editorial stuff were gotten rid of. This is across the entire company. I should hasten to add, not kind of like any one particular imprint. And for some writers, it was a bit of a bloodbath of kind of cancelled projects. So
okay. You're making us afraid at the moment, but how else could it go?
Yeah. So I'm looking at this right now and going, well, that's what you did the last time you ate another big company. Is that going to happen again here? There's no guarantee that it will. I mean, I'm trying not to be like a kind of glass half full sort of guy here. But however you slice it, reducing the number of publishers from it used to be the big six, then it was the big five, now it's going to be the big four. If there are less publishing companies, it's bad for writers in any way you slice it, because it means there's less options for writers to find places for their books. It's less places for you to pitch to, and that means a kind of consolidation of editorial teams, and it means that there's less money to go around, there's less opportunities. All of that can create a sort of chilling effect which stifles new voices and writers who want to come out with something that's different. It leans towards a more conservative approach in terms of what kind of franchises and what kind of author brands they're looking towards. It's very difficult to kind of keep that sort of open network if everything starts to conglomerize, So I am a little concerned about that, kind of in the larger scale of things as an author. And then in terms of being somebody who writes for a particular, the Gallery Books Star Trek imprint of Simon & Schuster, I have no idea how that kind of thing is going to shake out. And you probably won't see any effects directly for this for at least a kind of year and a half, because that's how long the publishing takes. So, maybe in a year's time, this time next year, or maybe kind of spring of 2022, we might start seeing actual effects of this going forward. What that means for the Star Trek franchise at Simon & Schuster, I don't know, because it means now Simon & Schuster is outside of the Viacom CBS umbrella. They don't have that relationship there. So when the next time the rights are up to be negotiated, who knows how that will go for us? Yeah, it's kind of like everything's very much up in the air right now.
That's interesting. I mean, I think a couple of things that I was thinking about is that, I mean, I think before Viacom CBS owned Simon & Schuster, or I don't know if they had owned it for a while before that, but I think when Paramount was the sole owner of the Star Trek license, I don't think that Pocketbooks at the time was owned by them. I think it was something that was separate, and sometimes that can happen. But also,
that's right.
Yeah. So I think we've had that before, and there have been a lot of books and all that. But I think also this deal, because it's a significant consolidation, has to have approval by U.S. government authorities and the Justice Department, and of course, there's going to be a change in administration and Justice Department coming up. So I don't know how that'll affect it, or if they'll just say no, you can't do that. So we don't know if it'll happen. I mean, I would hope that they would actually see what's been happening with the Star Trek imprint and be like, you know what, we can take advantage more of this and put more novels out. I'm trying to be positive about it, because I mean, maybe that would be that kind of thing. Like, they haven't been utilizing it enough lately with all of these shows coming out, but I don't know. But I think you're right, James. We won't know for a little while, and also it has to get approved. So, yeah. Sure.
I mean, that's certainly a thing. I mean, you have to know that the main reason that I think Viacom CBS bought Simon & Schuster in the first place is that they wanted to kind of vertically integrate that into their kind of entertainment franchise. They wanted to make it a content creator, so they could say, well, what new books are coming out that Simon & Schuster have? Oh, that's a cool book. Let's make that into a TV show or a movie. Yeah. And they wanted they wanted to kind of feed that stuff in. And that didn't really work for them, because it wasn't. I don't think the fit was really there. None of that has anything to do with the Star Trek imprint. And as you quite rightly say, that imprint existed way before Simon & Schuster was ever a part of CBS Viacom, and hopefully it will remain there. I mean, obviously there's a huge amount of institutional knowledge and people who are involved with the project for a very long time, who have the skill set to continue to produce good quality Star Trek writing. Yeah. And hopefully that will continue.
Yeah, and the other thing that I was just thinking about is, I mean, the thing that's happened since Discovery has launched has been that there's been a fairly tight integration between, those who are making the show and those who are making the novels, in terms of, here's what's happening in the show, and, here's where we like to go with these things. And if it was part of two different companies, I would think they probably couldn't have that kind of interaction necessarily, right?
Well, not really. I mean, I've worked on different sorts of IPs. It's down to the IP holder about how involved they want to be. Okay. So just because Simon & Schuster's not part of Viacom and CBS, that doesn't immediately mean that we can no longer talk to Kirsten Beyer over at kind of, a Paramount about, well, what are you doing on Discovery? What's going to happen in Picard? What kind of novels are we going to tell?
Okay.
I don't think that door would automatically close just because they're not part of the same parent company. I mean, that would be a foolish decision to make, I think.
I mean, I think I think that there was always, though, that kind of talking back and forth, but it seems like in the last couple of years it's been much closer than it was before.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, a very much closer integration, and you can lay all of that at Kirsten's feet because she, being an author, she understands the importance of trying to make sure that the literary stuff syncs up with what's appearing on screen, and doing that extra little bit of work, going that extra mile to make sure these things do cross connect. It's worth it for us as writers, for you as the readers, for everybody, is to kind of create a contiguous whole of the franchise rather than making it feel like the books exist in their own little bubble, and the comics are over here, and whatever other ancillary projects are over there, and then the TV shows are somewhere else. Having everything feel like it's all part of the same whole, I think everything supports everything else.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that the good thing that comes out of this is, yes, we get more Star Trek. We keep getting more Star Trek books, but I'm really crossing my fingers that they go back to just normal size paperbacks.
Mass markets. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yep. Yeah. That's probably not going to happen, because that's more of a move these days because of the way the industry has changed. That's nothing to do with a decision by Simon & Schuster or the imprint. It's just certainly in the US the book trade and the book buying sort of part of the industry has moved to the trade paperback as being the kind of default paperback size. So unless that changes, I'm sorry to tell you that the mass market ones, that the smallest, and believe me, I love them too, because that's my favorite sort of size of paperback. But don't expect to see those coming back anytime soon.
Well, I remember those weird ones that they had. They started coming out about 10 or 15 years ago. They were like as wide as a normal paperback, but like 2 inches taller, and it's like, what is this?
Oh yeah,
style?
Yeah, my Mark Dane thriller novels in the US are published like that in these kind of strange sort of tall paperbacks.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. I think they can get kind of like more of those in a shipping carton. It's a weird thing, but
I can actually answer this one for you guys because I was working at Barnes and Noble when this happened. This font is slightly larger, and they can handle a larger font in general in it. And so this was actually an appeal for people who are older, let's say boomers, but not just boomers, who don't necessarily want to pull out the reading glasses in order to read. At least that's how it was explained to us. And that was for the extra tall mass markets. That now it makes more sense to just go to a trade size, if you ask me, in that case. But that was how it was explained to us. And they were strange. I agree.
Because I collect the books, man. And I mean, like, we just got To Lose Earth by Kirsten Beyer, right? I've got 40 Voyager novels that are one size on my shelf with one book that's now triple the size. And it's like so aggravating as a collector of books.
I mean, those things that'll ruin your day, huh?
I don't know. Problem.
That's why I have this thing. My little tablet.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I still like to read physical books. I actually like the trade paperbacks. When I read one of them and then go back to one of the smaller ones, it looks tiny and I have to like readjust to it. But anyway, sorry, Brandon. That's probably not going to change. It sounds like.
I'm going to the mirror universe where they got smaller books.
I mean, yeah, I got to be honest with you, I feel you. I really do. I mean, I'm looking across the room now at kind of my bookshelf, and there's my line of like Trek paperbacks, and it's like the first bunch of Titan novels. What is it? What else have I got over there? Star Trek Voyager, the String Theory series, and they're all that kind of size.
And keep those. Those are valuable now. If you got those,
and right next to it, then I've got my little kind of shelf of fame, right, which is where I keep my books. And I've got like a line of Star Trek ones, and it's kind of like, the same size, and it's boing, and it just jumps to my first Discovery novel is in that trade paperback size. But it's, I mean, digital. I mean, you can always go to digital. Digital doesn't take up any room. But,
nope. That's
the. I mean, as long as you can access it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, well,
it's always been my worry.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah. So, speaking of books, And since we have James on as one of our authors, he has a new book coming out. It's going to be in the Picard part of the Star Trek universe. You probably have seen the cover already. It's a Riker Troy story, and it's called Dark Veil. And James has just a little bit of a tease that he can give us, I'm told.
Okay, well,
that's going
I'll
to be
read
out
you
in
the...
January, by the way.
That's right, yeah. So I'll give you the back cover blurb. I'll give you the blurb first. The Alpha Quadrant is mired in crisis. Within the United Federation of Planets, a terrorist strike on the shipyards of Mars has led to the shutdown of all relief efforts for millions of Romulans facing certain doom from an impending supernova. But when the USS Titan is drawn into a catastrophic incident on the Romulan Federation border, Captain William Riker, his family, and his crew find themselves caught between the shocking secrets of an enigmatic alien species and the deadly agenda of a ruthless Tau Shiar operative. Forced into a wary alliance with a Romulan starship commander, Riker and the Titan crew must uncover the truth to stop a devastating attack, but one wrong move could plunge the entire sector into open conflict.
Nice.
All right, and I love how you read that. Very nice, nicely dramatic. I'm very excited. I want to read it now. You can send it to us now, right?
And I'll read you the back.
Go ahead.
I'll read the back cover blurb as well, because there's a little bit kind of like a little excerpt of text there as well.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
As I utter the words now, we will conduct this tribunal in Federation standard in deference to Captain Riker's presence, continued Castus, and in the interest of openness with the United Federation of Planets. The Judicator said the word as if it was sour to her, alien and ashen on her tongue. She indicated the three shadowy forms around her. Tribune Delos will observe for Major Helek. Tribune Nadai will observe for Commander Medaka and the Romulan Senate, and our visiting advocate will observe for the human captain. Riker shielded his eyes, trying to peer past the light from the glow globes to get a good look at the person assigned to him, but it was impossible to pick out anything. The shadow gave him nothing, no face, no hint of gender, only uncertainty. He knew little of Romulan legal practices. Was Riker's silent watcher his lawyer, his judge, executioner even? He banished that last notion with a grimace. Everything that had happened over the last few days, every decision Will Riker had made, he stood four square behind them. What that would mean here and now in this place, he couldn't know. But there would be no obfuscation from him, no wordplay and clouding of the truth. And once again, something came back to Riker, something Picard had said to him years earlier on their very first mission together. If we're going to be damned, let's be damned for what we really are.
Excellent. Love it. Yeah.
Beautiful.
That's a special thing to have. Thank you so much for doing that.
Yes, thank you.
And
no, my pleasure, guys.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to this because I'm actually just finishing up reading the Titan novels that have come before this, and you've written several that I've really loved, and I just really love the series. And it's just nice that it's going to, continue at least in this form. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's been very interesting to tackle this because it's a different take on Titan because this is a version of the story that is synchronizing with the events of the Picard TV series, which if anybody's been paying attention to that in the Litverse, you know that the TV show has kind of pretty much overwritten a lot of the stuff that we've done over the past 18 years in the TV series in the Litverse. So this is a Titan that you will recognize and with some familiar characters, but it is also going to be populated by new characters, and it's going to be a slightly different version from the one that you're familiar with.
Well, I got a few questions. If you can say yes or no, or I can't answer it, that's fine either way. But let me ask you these questions. In this book, does Riker make pizza?
Let me think. He does not make pizza. He's got quite a lot to do in this story. He's pretty busy.
Okay. For 1.
No, I don't think he.
Okay. In this book, does Riker lift his leg over a chair?
I didn't write that in, but there's a couple of scenes where he takes a seat. You can certainly imagine that happening. I think it's Will Riker, right? He's going to take a seat that way.
Does Riker finally play Nightbird?
Not in this story, no.
Okay, now for a serious one here. You probably can't answer it. Do we see Tuvok or Vale in this book? And you could say, I can't answer that if you can't answer it.
I can neither confirm nor deny the presence of those characters.
Okay.
That's
right.
As a fan of
yes.
Titan novels, that's what I'm eagerly awaiting to find out here.
I'd
So
hope for that.
this is an interesting fork in the road that we got with the novels now, and because without spoiling anything, for the last Voyager novel, like they kind of left that in a very interesting position, right? Which could or could not tie into future events and whatnot. But it's interesting how that book ended. So it'll be neat to see, because I know, like they said, and I heard Kirsten Beyer on an interview with our friends Bruce and Dan on Positively Trek recently, and she's like, they could be picked up. They could keep doing these books. They're not sure. David Mack and Dayton Ward have said multiple times that there's a plan for the transition of the books and whatnot. And I mean, all three of us here are big fans of the books, and so we're eager to see where they go. We're very, very excited. So
it's interesting you mentioned Dave and Dayton. I am also part of that plan.
Awesome.
Oh,
awesome.
Yay.
Excellent. Anything more
We've
important?
Outside confirmation.
We've had there is a plan. Dave and Dayton and I are involved in that plan, and things are happening.
Just as long as it's not like the Cylons plan, and they didn't really have a plan. They just told us they did. So
no, but that's really great to hear. I'm just eager to read the novel and to see where things go. So yeah, looking forward to that in January.
Excellent. Awesome.
Yeah, see, maybe Random House and Simon & Schuster putting money into the Star Trek novels, we can get back to the way it was in the 90s, where there were like 2 every month. Maybe.
The book's got to be a little bit shorter for that to happen.
Hard to keep up.
Well, they were a little shorter then. They were, but
I'll
bring in more authors.
Let's start with 1 a month and see if I can keep up with that.
There we go.
I would absolutely love it if if we're talking about, let's blue sky here for a second, right? Let's look at the most positive spin we could put on this. Let's say that Random House come in and say, you know what, there's not enough Star Trek. We need more Star Trek, and suddenly there's more opportunity. I would absolutely love to see some of the stuff, to more lines, more Star Trek books to come out. Some of the older sort of book line series that had been kind of neglected to maybe kind of come back from the dead. And I would love to see more writers, because if we had more books coming out, we would get more opportunity for more voices. Because as much as I want to keep writing Star Trek novels, I would love to see some new writers, some new people's takes on the show, and just get some new fresh voices in there as well.
Definitely. Although there are 2 novels coming up that do have new authors.
That's true.
The TNG novel by Cassandra Clark and the DS9 novel by Alex White, right?
That's right. Yeah. Is it Alex? Alex is doing.
I think it's DS9, a Dax story or something like that. Yeah.
Is it? I think is it Dax and Kira's story? I think he's doing.
I think so. Yeah.
Sorry, they're doing. And it's Shadows Have Offended is Cassandra's book.
Yep, that's right.
Right, which is I think a Troy Crusher, Beverly Crusher novel. Yeah, which is cool.
Yeah, I mean, I was really interested in when Alex started talking about what they were doing, is that they had have you read their Alien novel?
No.
It's really interesting sort of take on the mythos of that franchise. So I'm thinking I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do with Star Trek.
I have to check that out. I just recently, well, I guess it's not recent, it's been out for a bit, but there was a short story compilation that came out with a bunch of alien stories and some Planet of the Apes stuff that I read a little while ago, a short story collection. So I'm always looking and getting more books for my favorite franchises.
Yeah, I'd love to see, I mean, I love anthology stories. I love writing short stories, but they're really hard to sell because it's difficult to get people to pick up an anthology because, you bring out a novel by, your favorite author and it's like, oh, I love this person, I'm going to get that book. But when you come up with the kind of the buffet that is an anthology, right? Some people go, well, I like this author, but I don't like that one. And sometimes it's a really, really hard sell. But I love that. That spread of like, that you can go through 10 different stories, go, I like this one, I didn't like that one, or, but it is in the book trade traditionally trying to sell sort of tie-in franchises is a bit difficult.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we could probably talk with you about novels for a while, but that's not actually the main reason we're here.
All right, so let's see, 25 minutes in here. Okay. This is getting to be like was on the old show.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, so we are here to talk about Discovery Unification III. Okay. And we usually start with our guests because we are talking about this. We haven't spoken to you about recent new treks, so we'd like to know what your thoughts are on Discovery as a whole. And then, of course, specific to just first impressions specific to this episode.
I really feel like season 3, it kind of almost, I don't want to say like a soft reboot because that kind of has like a lot of negative connotations, but I feel like the show has sort of found an interesting, different direction. And I wasn't really sure what to make of it. You know, when we got to that last episode where it's like everybody's going to go to the future, and I was like, wait, what? That's the choice you're going to make? Okay. And it was one of those reactions I had. Initially, I was like, I think on some gut level, a little fanboy voice went, I don't like this. And then I kind of said to myself, why don't you like it? Do you not like it because it challenges you and it scares you a little bit? That's a good thing, you know? And immediately, of course, it solves a lot of the kind of continuity problems of the show. It's like, well, whatever happened to Discovery? Whatever happened to the Spore Drive? It's like, well, it went to the future. That's why we don't know about it. You know, well, it was erased from the records. That's why, you know, all of that continuity with the ship is suddenly kind of erased. And that all makes sense. You know, that ticks all of those boxes. And so all of those questions are immediately answered. And it does something, and they're doing this throughout the series. And I really hope they continue to explore this. We've seen time-displaced people in Star Trek very often. And it's always been somebody from the past being dumped in the future. We never get somebody from the future being dumped in the past, which is a completely different kind of story to tell, right? I mean, if you go back to, is it Cause and Effect, the one with the USS Bozeman?
Yes.
The one with Kelsey Grammer as the captain of the ship. You remember the end of that episode is, they kind of fix the time loop, and Kelsey Grammer's like, what the hell is going on here? And he's like, well, Picard's like, well, you're in the future now. Everything's fine. You know, come on back to Starfleet.
Yeah.
And then that's the last you see of those. And I remember reading, I think it was in one of the DC comic books, they did a story about that guy being, or maybe it was in a short story. I forget which one.
Maybe, but there was also a novel, Ships of the Line, which had the Bozeman with that captain.
What I'm thinking of is particularly a short story. It's either a short story or it was a comic book.
Okay.
And basically it's that character. I can't remember the name of the captain. Bateson, that's it. Yeah, Morgan Bateson, that's the guy. Yeah, and it was basically him kind of going, I don't know how to handle this. I'm, completely all at sea. And he's talking to a counselor, and at the end they sort of say, well, we've got this person here who's a consultant who'll help us. And Scotty walks in and says, let me tell you what it's like being kind of waking up 300 years into the future. And that was the kind of the story. And I always thought to myself, there must be, because this is Starfleet, right? There must be the Department of Temporally Displaced People, right? There must be somebody whose job it is to kind of go, have you been displaced temporarily? Let's help you kind of readjust and get back into things. But we've never seen that process of what it's like to be torn apart from everything that because it's always been guest star characters. Right. But now here we have an entire cast, our characters, our friends on this show, and it's all of them having to go through that experience. And that is the thing that really has been fascinating me, is how they handle this. How they, fitting back in, and especially because they've reappeared in such a changed universe where everything, all bets are off. It's not like, I would imagine, like the, Morgan Bateman reappearing in the TNG time period. We go, well, things, politically stuff has changed, but Starfleet's still Starfleet. The Federation's still the Federation. It's more or less the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But for our characters on Discovery, it's been a massive shakeup. And I'm really fascinated by that. And I want to see how that kind of plays out as the season goes forward.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. And in terms of the episode, in terms of Unification 3, I love the fact as well that they called it Part 3. Part 3 of an episode that we saw in the 1990s. It's like, oh, we forgot to do that. Here we are. We're doing the third part of it now. It's ably written by my good friend Kirsten there. It's a bottle show, and I love bottle shows. Because you get your characters, you stick them on the ship, and you have stuff happen to them, and it becomes all about character, and you don't get to lean on cool special effects or alien of the week, right? It's got to be, this is all about characters talking their way through a situation and dealing with it. And we get this incredible moment of sort of connectivity where we finally see the unification of the Romulans and the Vulcans, something that's only been sort of hinted at up to this point, and to suddenly see it, you know, the biggest kind of gasp moment for me was like they renamed Vulcan. It's like, what?
Yeah.
That moment for me was like, wow, that was emblematic to me of the whole changed world that our characters find themselves in. Mm-hmm. So I thought it was a really fascinating episode, and a, you know, really interesting sort of way of weaving not only good Star Trek continuity into the storyline, but also weaving in our own characters' questions. You know, Michael becomes the sort of mouthpiece, I think, for everybody on the ship, in as much as, you know, questioning her place in the future that she's found herself in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Well, Brandon, what are your first impressions?
So, first time I saw the episode, I'm like, this is fantastic. It blew me away. There's a couple little things that we'll discuss about that I think are a little bit of missteps, but they don't detract away from the whole. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
But I want to broach this subject here first, because I don't know if we really have a spot for it. Maybe broaching this will mean we'll discuss it later instead, so you can tell me that as well. But I don't necessarily think Unification 3 is a good title for this episode. And watching it kind of feels weird to me. And the reason why I don't think it quite fits is, like, the name of the episode is what the episode's about. And Unification 1 and Unification 2 are about Spock's mission. They're about finding Spock. They're about trying to figure out what's going on with Spock, because he's just gone rogue. And we find out that what Spock is trying to do is unify the people. And this is not about unifying the Romulan people. Yes, we see centuries later aftermath, but this episode is really about Burnham trying to get scientific information. It's not about unification. So it's interesting to have that direct callback.
It's interesting you say that, because I think it's a very appropriate title, because there are multiple unifications going on here, mm-hmm. which we can talk about. But I don't know if we're going to talk about it here. But I think for the title, I think for me, it was very, very appropriate. But anyway.
I thought it was appropriate too, although I think it might have been better for them to have not done that, because we all kind of felt like we knew part of what was going to happen. Whereas if they had called that, say, you know, maybe SB-19 or something, we wouldn't have been spending the past 7 weeks going,
what an exciting
Unification,
title.
What?
Yeah.
You know? Well,
I like that by virtue of the title, it caused so many of us to rewatch the first 2 episodes, which to me, having seen it recently, made what happened more meaningful. But,
okay. I didn't have the opportunity to rewatch Unification 1 and 2. I have not had the opportunity this week. It's been super busy for me, so...
No.
My iPad is in the shop with a bad battery, and I usually download those things off Netflix and watch them on my lunch break. And
it's funny, because I think one of the things that I've read when people have talked about the Unification 2-parter is it was not only talking about the possible unification of, like, Romulans and Vulcans, but it was also talking in a way about, like, a more tight unification between the original series and the Next Generation. And, like, in the same way, I think Unification 3 is also about kind of a tighter integration between what's happening in the 32nd century and what we saw in the 23rd and 24th century. So it's that kind of unification kind of as well. And you're also unifying, like, the different Prime Spocks that we've seen. I don't know. I think it felt appropriate on a lot of levels, but...
Well, I'm just saying, I just think that a better title for this should have been Only Nixon Could Go to Nivar.
Sure.
Well, put a pin in that, because Nixon in China is part of Chrissy's History Corner.
Nice.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Justin, other initial thoughts?
Well, so
first impressions?
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, especially the first time, I was just kind of blown away by this episode, because, you know, ever since I started watching TNG, which admittedly was more recently, more like 10 years ago, but still, ever since I saw that, I saw these hints of possibilities of you know, Romulans not being the enemy as much as they had been before. And Unification 1 and 2 I thought was great in seeing that possibility, but ever since I saw that, I've always wanted to see what that looked like, to have them come together. So I thought it was wonderful to actually see them come together, to actually see the consequences that we'll talk about. So I think that was wonderful. There's, I think, so many great things that are happening here in dialogue for Saru and Burnham and Tarina and, you know, the Vulcan and Romulan people that she's debating with, and there's just like so many great things that are happening in just what they're talking about. And I love those episodes where what they're talking about is important and there's really no action or anything like that happening. So I thought it was really, really wonderful. There is one part that I think after I watched it the first time I saw a criticism of that I think is valid and that we'll talk about. But overall, I thought this might be the best episode of Discovery we've had so far in the 3 seasons.
It's very much, feels very much like a Kirsten Beyer story. Like, because in Kirsten Beyer's Voyager novels, like there's a lot of discussion, a lot of dialogue, and a lot of talking that happens in them. And that's where the plot is driven in her books, I think. And I feel that in this episode.
Definitely. Yeah. So I love that as well. Yeah.
How about you, Chrissy? What do you think?
If we want to go with a literal first impression, I was hoping that we would have the intro the way we did for the episode with where we went back
to Talos.
To Talos, yeah.
Yeah, the previous
on
Star Trek,
The Next Generation.
Yes! I loved that. That just, like, at the time made me laugh out loud. It was wonderful, and happiness. And I think I was really disappointed that we weren't right into the episode. And then
Interesting.
They fixed it by having the holographic Spock that was talking to her. And so then I was like, okay, so that's why they didn't do that.
I have to say, though, like, when are we going to get the Menagerie Part 3 where we go back to Talos and see what it's like in the 32nd century? Anyway.
Good.
It's been done in the books in a way, but not on screen.
Maybe they should have called that one episode from season 2 of Discovery. They should have called it the Menagerie Part 3.
The Menagerie Part 3. Well, it wouldn't really be because the Menagerie happened after those episodes. So, anyway.
The Menagerie Zero.
Okay, whatever. Anyway,
I loved it. I'm going to get into the little. I have little nitty gritty things I want to talk about with it, but overall, it just made me happy.
Yeah.
So let's start out at the beginning here, or close to it. I just want to do a real quick round the group here. What do we think SB-19 is? And I'm going to start with James. Just like a sentence or two. What do you think they're doing?
Well, it was interesting to me to see. I saw that clip that got put out before the episode did. I don't know if you saw it, where it's the scene where Tilly's explaining about the microsecond delays between the ships that got blown up by the burn. And she says, this thing SB-19 is a series of like sort of subspace beacons. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. But then when I watched the episode, they're like, no, actually, this is part of a larger project. This is part of an attempt to create an alternate drive system. And it made me think of the subspace corridors used by the Vaudois and the Borg, which we saw in Voyager. And immediately kind of like, my nerd brain engages and I'm like, maybe wouldn't that be cool if SB-19 is like, Tuvok brought them the information back to Vulcan and that's where it came from. And the Vulcans picked up this technology and they decided to do it and it all went terribly wrong, And I kind of got straight into the weeds about that, being, because I'm a bit of a Trek tech head on the quiet, So I started thinking about that. And I also wondered if, every time you see the Vulcans do anything that's kind of like, any sort of huge technological kind of idea, it kind of connects back to, I'm thinking, would it be related to, the Kelvin timeline, red matter stuff? Is there a connection to that as well? Is there a way that these things might mesh together? But I think it's just, is it just what it seems to be, or is there an extra layer underneath it? Is it just they were trying to develop a drive system, a subspace network, a kind of subspace subway, right? Is that what it was, or is there more to it? So I'm interested to see if we'll get more of that.
I'm sure we will. All right, Justin, what do you think it is?
Okay, if I were to say in a few sentences, I think based on that it has something to do with subspace buoys or something like that, and then also you see like the little graphic where it looks like it's coming up to this swirling thing and just kind of disappears. I don't know. It made me think that it's almost like a large scale form of the kind of space folding technology that you see in Voyager that they actually had in Picard as part of the Borg stuff, where it was, I forget, even the trajector, the spatial trajector. I thought of it kind of like that it's like you pass through this thing and it can put your starship like through a series of buoys or relays to get you to a distant destination or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brandon?
I'm not quite sure what I think SB-19 is going to be yet. I've been thinking about it.
It's a Stargate.
It's a Stargate. It might be.
It kind of looks
That's
like
literally
it.
what I have written down. Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what I think it is going to be, though. But here's the interesting thing that I've been thinking about, especially after this episode. I kind of want SB-19 to actually have been the cause. Right? Just because we're getting this, she's got the information to research it, doesn't mean she's going to find out that SB-19 is not the cause. Right? Because that was one of the aspects of this episode that I loved the most, where that Vulcan was like, why won't you take our word for the fact that we know that this caused it? Mm-hmm. And it was a part of that scene that I really, really loved. And SB-19 could be the cause of it. Right? There could be a way that it's related in some way. I'm sure it's not going to end up that way, but I kind of would really almost like it if it was. I think that would be really interesting.
I have a way in which it might be related.
Okay.
Because as I was thinking about this more, like over the course of the week, I thought about it in terms of who stood to gain the most. And I think the answer to that is the Emerald Chain. And I think that in some way, they instigated it for their own purposes, because they seem to be doing pretty well in the 32nd century with all their commerce and stuff. But they did it in such a way that the blame would be put elsewhere, like on the Vulcans with their SB-19 or whatever. But maybe that's too elaborate, but that was a thought that came up.
I get the impression that the Emerald Chain is more of a newer thing, right? Like that would have come as a result of the burn, right? So the burn happens and then the Federation becomes less cohesive, more spread out, and therefore the Emerald Chain fills that void.
But we've seen that the Orions have a big part in that, so maybe it was like the Orion Syndicate having some part in this, and then they became bigger as part of... I don't know. Maybe?
Yeah, we're not sure. The only other thing that I thought of, and I could be just... I don't know, because it's been 10 years since I've seen it, is the title of this thing is SB-19. And Chrissy, I don't know how big a Walking Dead fan you are, but the first season finale of Walking Dead is TS-19. And as soon as I heard SB-19, I initially thought, I'm like, isn't that the same thing as it was called in The Walking Dead? And then no, I looked it up and it's TS-90. But I haven't seen that episode in like 10 years or whatever since it first aired. But I think the TS-19 was the thing that instigated the zombies and the apocalypse there, but I could be wrong about that. It's been 10 years, but
Walking Dead crossover.
She, we had Burnham from the Walking Dead. She wasn't in it at the time. She wasn't in the show in season 1, but
interesting.
You saying about Stargates there. Actually, one of the things I thought of when I saw that little animation of the kind of the wormhole opening and the gate going through, the ship going through, is I did think of Stargates, but not the Stargate you're thinking of. The Stargates from Buck Rogers in the 25th century.
Oh.
If you remember those.
Yeah.
When they used to fly around, you get these 4 stars that appear and they go, pew, and the ship little fighter ships would zoom through these gateways and then hyperspace across to the other side of the galaxy. Mm-hmm. And that was the first thing I thought of, is that the Vulcans were trying to develop something that you could do, instantaneous, faster than light travel from through a wormhole rather than actually through, using warping space around the ship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The only other theory that I kind of had, and I don't know how realistic this would be, is that what if they don't realize it yet, but what if SB-19 was like an independently found way to activate a spore drive?
You think it actually has something to do with the mycelial network?
Yes, and then this is how Discovery's going to play into it and whatnot. I don't know. That was the only other thought I was thinking of. Because this stuff tends to get all wrapped up and tied in together. So, I don't know.
I like that.
Yeah.
I think SB-19 is probably going to be related to causing the burn, but I doubt it's going to be... You're not going to be able to lay it at the Vulcans' feet or the people who were working on it. It's either going to be accidental or some baddie took it and used it the wrong way. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Could be, yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. But my vote's on Stargate.
But the frustrating thing about this with this whole scientific investigation and whatnot is there's a line in science, and that is a difference that makes no difference is no difference. Right? Have you guys ever heard this before?
Okay.
I don't know if that relates to
No.
science. I thought it was more philosophy.
Is it more in philosophy? So
Hold on, I'll have to look it up.
okay, so I've heard that term before, and it's like when they're measuring these things in the term of 7 millionths of a microsecond,
Yeah.
right? Or 1 millionth of a microsecond. Like, this is a difference that makes no difference. Therefore,
I think it
difference.
very much makes a difference.
I would disagree.
It very
Okay,
much
let's
makes a
talk
difference.
about this.
By the way, I looked up that quote, and it's from a philosopher named Alfred Korzybski, I think. But no, I mean, it makes a difference because, like, especially when you're thinking about how things propagate. If it's instantaneous, there should be no difference. And if they have sensors that can go down to that small of a time scale, and you can keep going down and down and down to a certain time scale, I think you could go some orders of magnitude below that before you can't actually kind of parse time any further than that because of some quantum mechanical rules. But anyway, I think when you're talking about something that's that small of a fraction of a second, it is significant. Because presumably they can even go down further in terms of what they can measure, and you would expect it to actually show like zero difference, that it's at the exact same point in time and not slightly displaced.
The computers in my work are all on the same network and everything, and even they can't even get their time clocks synchronized to me and the person that sits in the next desk.
Yeah, but that's a little bit different. But we do even now have time servers that are linked to atomic clocks that can be accurate to billionths of a second. And being accurate to billionths of a second can add up over time, so that if you're not actually synced to that, you can be off by a short period of time over some period of years. It can make a difference.
You can't have a galactic spanning organization. I was going to say empire, but that's not the right phrase, right? You can't have a galactic spanning federation if you don't have clocks that synchronize. If you, I mean, in fact, you can. There's a historical precedent for this about the idea, the instigation of Greenwich Mean Time in the real world, which allowed us to kind of create time zones. So you could actually start saying this train will arrive at 3 o'clock here, but it'll arrive at sort of 10 o'clock over there. You need to have that kind of level of synchronicity from planet to planet, so you can just organize stuff. So when you can send someone a subspace mission going, this starship will be appearing in orbit around your planet in 3 days' time. And you have to have it. So you'd have to have a clock on Vulcan that is synchronized with the clock on Earth. And across interstellar distances, especially when we're talking about warping of space-time, which happens when you're flying your ship around, through all these kind of weird space anomalies and creating warped space around your vessel, it would be absolutely imperative to have a clock system that would be able to go down to, infinitesimally, femtoseconds rather than milliseconds of time. So the fact that we are looking at sort of with the details that Tilly's putting together in that clip, saying that there's these milliseconds of difference. It's all about the scale. Is to us as human beings, right? That kind of those figures are, it's difficult for us to comprehend a piece of time that small. But when you go down into the macro scale, there might even be species in the Federation who do think on scales as quickly as that. I mean, certainly androids. Data is a being that does think on a scale that is that finite. So for him, those kind of infinitesimal sort of moments would seem like a large amount of time. So I think it's definitely, it may seem like it makes no difference to us, but it makes a difference on the different scale. You just have to think in that different scale.
But the Vulcan who's leading the inquiry there himself says there's numerous explanations that could result for a time differential that small.
Yeah, well, what the Vulcan is actually saying is you have three data points. That's not enough to really draw a conclusion or to add to us. We have this thing that has all these other data points that tell us something else, right? So they're going to have to go deeper into that. But no, I think that the tiny difference in time does make a difference, especially when you're talking about vast distances. I think that what that means is that this is something that traveled very, very quickly, but not infinitely fast, right? It wasn't something that somehow affected the everything all at once. It came from somewhere.
Right. Because we're told right off the bat that it seemed to happen all at the same time. Now we know that that's not the case.
Yeah,
because
almost
we're
the same time,
breaking this down into millionths of a microsecond.
But that's
I have absolutely no doubt that this is going to pan out. That that they are absolutely going to find an origin point for this, and this did start somewhere because that's the story they're telling us. But also, what I'm saying is, like, with numbers this small, that is no difference when it's that small.
When you're talking about our own, like, everyday existence, that doesn't even matter. But when you're talking about something that spans such a huge distance and across so many areas, I think it does make a difference.
The thing you have to remember is whether it makes a difference to the person who is handling it. Okay, so it makes a difference for the people who are studying whether or not the burn started here and then moved out, or if it happened all at the same time. But it doesn't necessarily make a difference for somebody who's looking at how to recrystallize lithium. It's a different issue. So I think, in some cases, not relevant. Other cases, it is. All right. So, that brings us right into Navarre and Michael's cowboy diplomacy in dealing with Spock's legacy. I had to get that in there.
Nice callback.
Yeah, thank you. It's not original, I guarantee that. So we're introduced to Navarre, which used to be Vulcan.
Can I make a quick comment about Navarre? Because I love that they chose this name, because it's something that goes all the way back to a fanzine called Spockanelia from 1967, and you have it right there.
I was about to bring that up, so go for it.
No, you probably have it in more detail, but I just love it. It's such a deep cut to go for that, and it means to form, which is so appropriate. But feel free to say more about it.
Oh, all right. Well, here's a point to all of the people who are saying that the Discovery writers don't know their Star Trek, right? First of all, I did not know this off the top of my head. So, Justin, if you
I
had
didn't
this
know
in
that
your head when you
before.
heard it.
I just saw it in an article, and I was like, "Wow, that's amazing."
I was going to give you all sorts of credit there, but
no.
So I have to credit TrekCore, because they tweeted about this, and then I have to credit Tristan Schwartz for posting it in the Positively Trek Facebook group, because I wouldn't have seen it otherwise. I somehow missed when TrekCore tweeted it. But it goes back to the Spockanelia. I love that.
That's great.
Okay. Fanzine. And it's, a woman named Dorothy Jones Hait, or Het, I forgive, I'm not pronouncing that right, is credited for it, and it means to form as a way of comparing or contrasting elements of a thing. And it was vouched for, shall we say, by Leonard Nimoy. He wrote about it in 1976. Quote, Navarre is a Vulcan term dealing with dualities of things. Two who are one, two diversities who are a unity, two halves that come back together to make a whole. So,
wonderful deep cut.
That.
Yeah, I mean, it's so cool to see that there, because Spockanelia is like it was the first Star Trek fanzine from back in from back in the day when these things were put together on somebody's kitchen table. And, using a mimeograph machine, pre-photocopier technology, right? It's put together with staples and mailed out. And it's so cool to see something that, like we're talking about truly deep fandom cut there to kind of bring that back and almost, kind of canonize it by putting it in the show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that does it. It's right there. So,
yeah.
So, that gets us into Navarre. So, right. James, thoughts about this unified but seemingly not so unified society on this planet?
Well, the whole bit where the Admiral says the planet, planet Navarre, formerly known as Vulcan, and that reaction that Burnham has where, her jaw drops, that was definitely, she's echoing me at that moment. I was like, oh my God, they've renamed Vulcan. And that's a big deal, right? Because it's such a core part of the Star Trek mythos, and it's like, what would have had to have happened to make such a astronomical geographical change, and this is something that is that huge, right? It's the reunification of these two cultures, and he gives that a nice quick little potted speech there. He's like, oh, you may not have known that this was going on, and of course I'd completely forgotten in that moment. I was like, oh, of course, because in Discovery's era, they didn't know what the Romulans looked like, because this is pre-Balance of Terror, right? So they only knew they didn't know that the Romulans were an offshoot of the Vulcans. So all of that stuff is new to them. And in that moment, there's Saru and Burnham just getting hit by 20 different bits of information at once. Oh, you didn't know this and this and this and this. Everything you thought was true. All these things. Here's a bunch of facts. By the way, Vulcans and Romulans are unified. Now go sort that out. And I love the way that just cut to the chase. So I loved all that kind of thing. And I've always been fascinated by the cross connection between two of the species. One of my favorite Star Trek novels of all time is The Romulan Way by Diane Duane and Peter Morwood, which is a really great book about the nature of the Romulan culture. And, I found myself sort of thinking a lot about that novel when I was watching this episode, seeing the two species kind of reunited, standing there side by side. When they beam on board the ship and the camera pans across and you see, here's a Vulcan, but here's Romulans with the kind of the pronounced brow ridges. So it's and you see them standing side by side and they're dressed the same way, and the badge with the merged the Romulan bird of prey with the planets in its claws and above that you've got the Idic symbol, that kind of unification of the two things. So all of that stuff, seeing all of that was, for me as a sort of old school Star Trek fan, it was like, wow, this is really kind of knocking me back and surprising me and fascinating me. So, just having that appear on screen, that and be legitimized and be like, this is a real thing. This is something that happened to me, was fascinating and a great sort of continuity nod that felt really organic and truly connected to that part of the story.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Did anybody else feel like it was odd that there wasn't at least a mention in passing that, the Romulan star blew up and that's part of the reason that this happened or something like that?
Yeah.
And that's an assumption on my part that was part of the reason, but it seems
right.
logical.
I think that they should have said something like that from Vance's point of view to give more information to Burnham, right? But I mean, that's also stuff that they would have been looking at on their way to Vulcan, like what happened to cause the Romulans to go there. So,
kind of, I mean, arguably you could say, is it relevant to the Romulan unification? Well, I guess it kind of is, and it isn't. I mean,
it's the reason it happened, but it's not relevant to what's going on now, like 800 years later. It's funny. I can't talk about it right now, but okay.
I can say that there is some material about the Romulan unification and the reaction to the supernova does turn up in my Picard novel. Just a couple of just a little bit in there. Somebody has a conversation about that. Mm-hmm. About how the Romulan reunification is affected by the supernova. Mm-hmm. So it's I guess it is there, but I think you make a good point there, Chrissy. I think it feels like maybe someone should have said, "Oh yeah, their star blew up." That kind of that's part that, because you can imagine that would have been something that would definitely spur them towards a closer relationship, especially with Spock's role in the attempt to stop the star blowing up. Mm-hmm. Because arguably you can say that Spock's been the guy who through all these years has been trying to say we should come together, and he knows that Romulans on one side don't want to do it and the Vulcans on the other side, and then this tragic event happens and Spock stands up front and center and says, I will help you solve this problem, and he fails. But in the attempt you that Spock must have been doing that, saying maybe if I do this the Romulans will believe that I'm on the level when I say that that we are people that could work together.
Well, he dies for it, as far as they know.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Brandon, thoughts on Navarre and that we haven't hit already?
I'm more interested in finding out who picked up Spock's mantle afterwards to continue this on.
That's the novel that I want, is what happened after Spock left and leading up to the reunification stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's Datan.
Pardon me?
Oh, Datan.
It would be Datan. I mean, if they're going to use somebody that was introduced.
From Unification?
The little boy, or that little boy, he's like a preteen.
Yeah.
From Unification.
Because they said it was a couple hundred years even afterwards before the Unification was complete, right? So even, if the Romulan destruction would have had some impact, it would have still taken a long time for them, I think, to get to Vulcan. But that's my biggest question coming off of that is where did that go? Because, we get to a point now where there is still a lot of mistrust, like centuries and centuries later, they still have all this mistrust and anger and hostility towards each other. And, while this president has said, we had to learn to let go of cliche lines like the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. It's like, okay, well, how else did Romulans influence Vulcan culture after they came back? Yeah. But it almost seems like they're still as divisive as ever.
Yeah, they talk about these insurgencies going on, and you're like, oh, that's interesting that they're having these problems.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that piqued my interest too, because the first place I went to with that is, do you have Vulcans who have decided to, let's say, live a Romulan lifestyle by not shedding their emotions, and that's an insurgency? Do you have Romulans who are trying to follow the teachings of Surak, and that's an insurgency, because they couldn't just trade places?
People like Shira that we see who are mixed Romulan and Vulcan, and what's that like?
Yeah. And what's their place in society? Are they, do they have an equal... do they have equal civil rights, I guess is where I'm going with that. And you wouldn't assume that they wouldn't, because it's Vulcan, but also it's Vulcan. And these Vulcans are a lot more reminiscent of the Vulcans we see in Enterprise than they are of any other era.
Like, this here just opens up so many storytelling possibilities for, like, refugees coming to their planet, and racism and hatred and stuff on behalf of the Vulcans toward the Romulans. But I do think that just like in Enterprise we learn the term Sirenites as people that followed Surak, I think that we probably have a whole faction of Cybokanites.
You just want a Cybok connection.
I totally do.
But that works. That works because no, seriously, that has the connection with Spock. So you have the Vulcans who choose to go the way of Spock's brother and to embrace that which the Romulans have embraced, right? I know you were joking, but I like it. I'm not saying it's not a joke anymore.
Cybokanites just doesn't roll off the tongue, though. Yeah.
It doesn't.
You also have to think that maybe there's going to be definite phases to the Vulcan culture there, because we've got pre-unification Vulcan, and then after the Romulan star goes supernova, then we have the period of kind of coming together. So maybe there was a kind of there would have been conflict there, and then maybe there's a kind of calm period where everybody's unified and everybody's happy, and then the burn happens, and the burn brings up all of the buried stuff that they dealt with when the unification happened, and now that's why we see these factionalism and kind of schisms starting to appear. Because I think one of the things that we see a lot with the planets that we're seeing in the future version in the future version of the Federation is places that were they were happy and kind and fine and everything was great, and then the burn happened and everything's been stripped away. And we saw that a little bit when we visited the Trill homeworld in a previous episode. And I think I kind of got the sense that we're seeing that on Vulcan or on Navarre now, is that things were fine and then the burn happened and it exposed the problems, that kind of the cracks that everybody had papered over.
See, I have questions about this, because what Vance says, and I love that line, it's like, do the Vulcans feel guilty or feel responsible for causing the burn? And they're like, no, we feel like they feel like we pushed them into causing the burn. And the question I have on that is, the burn happened like 120 or 130 years ago, yet there's a line of dialogue in this that says the Vulcan left the Federation nearly 100 years ago. What would have kept them around for another 20 or 30 years?
We don't know the exact timing yet, because I think all that we know about the timing so far of the burn is that in a previous episode, Book said about 100 to 120 years ago.
I think Vance confirmed that number, though.
I don't know if he did confirm a specific number, but it seems like, maybe they stayed around for a little bit and then just couldn't handle it and had to leave. I don't know.
I mean, there is that line in the episode as well, saying that the burn, there was already friction between Navarre and the Federation before the burn happened.
Because the Federation was running out of dilithium. Before the burn, which is really interesting.
I'm trying to find that Quark line. Something about if you take away their root beer and deprive them of sleep and sonic showers, then they become just as much animals as other somebody else.
But
I don't.
it's that whole
I'm
idea
butchering
about
it.
there's that whole idea about society is only like 3 square meals away from anarchy at any time, right?
And when you think about what for the Vulcans to have
I have the
gone to a
quote
point
if you
where-
want it from Quark.
Oh, please, thank you.
Yeah.
My Googling was not as good as yours.
No, it's okay. It's when Quark is talking to Nog, and he says, "Let me tell you something about humans, nephew. They're wonderful, friendly people as long as their bellies are full and their holosuites are working. But take away their creature comforts, deprive them of food, sleep, sonic showers, put their lives in jeopardy over an extended period of time, and those same friendly, intelligent, wonderful people will become as nasty and as violent as the most bloodthirsty Klingon."
There we go. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great scene.
That's from Siege of AR something.
AR 558. Yeah,
558.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, we have all of this wonderful potential for storytelling of how we get, and this is like, let's not talk short treks. This is like a whole mini series if we want to have that.
I want a whole series of novels about Navarre's like history between like 24th and 32nd century. But they've opened up like all of this stuff just by talking about where they are now and what's happened recently. Yeah,
and what it takes to get there. And all the this is where the political intrigue stories get into me. Before we step away from this, though, I want to mention: did anybody notice that the planet looked different?
I did notice at the end.
There was a lot more water and a lot more green.
Was there?
Yeah.
I noticed it the most at the end where they're pulling away from the cargo bay outside Discovery, and then you see like these kind of wavering green things, almost like an aurora borealis, northern lights kind of effect around the planet.
Yeah.
So it seems the planet has changed in some way. It's not as much of a desert planet, maybe, but you're right. I think I did see some where it seemed like there was more water, although there has always been water in places on Vulcan, but it's just mostly desert. But yeah, it does seem like it's changed.
Vulcan suffering from global cooling. That's what it is.
Yeah. Right. So one of the scenes you can see out the window, and there's a lot of kind of green and blue going on, and that made me wonder if the Romulans were plunked somewhere and told to here, you can terraform this part so that
would make sense because Romulus has a lot of water on it. We've we've seen it. So
ooh, that's a good connection. I think that could be. Speaking of things out the viewport, apparently I didn't notice this, but Trekcore said you can see out the viewpoint Vulcan's sister planet, which you kind of saw in the animated series and was referenced in the novels as Takut. I thought that was cool, but I didn't actually see it. I don't know if you saw it, James, or anybody else, but
no.
I didn't catch that.
Okay.
I want to ask one more question about a connection that made me think of when I heard it on the episode, was when the Federation was running out of dilithium before the burn, and how a lot of people felt like they felt frustrated with the Federation because the Federation was asking too much of them. And so how I interpreted this, maybe they said this, and this is not just an interpretation, but the Federation was asking them to mine more dilithium than they were comfortable doing. And like utilizing this. So it made me think of oil on our planet right now and natural resources and stuff like that is what I thought of. But I was wondering if if anybody caught any feeling out of that, because it made me think of something from Star Trek Picard when I heard that. And it made me think of specifically in the novel by Una McCormack, when there's that one president or whatever of one planet, and they're talking about leaving the Federation at that time because the Federation made the decision to focus so much efforts on Romulus and started neglecting other planets because of this.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So, and with Vulcan, the president of the Vulcan going and talking about this and having them leave and whatnot, it brings me back to my original thoughts on Picard. It's like, did Starfleet do the right thing, and were they wrong to pull out their support for Romulus?
Yeah, it's very interesting because I definitely noticed when Tarina was talking to Saru and saying that it was this scarcity of dilithium was caused by the size of the Federation, like it expanded too much and had too many needs to go between all of these different planets, which makes you think like, was there some reason that they felt they had to keep pushing and doing that, even though maybe they might be able to tell that it would strain the resources, and maybe there are other pressures that they had. And she does say that they focused on the many instead of the few, which is, I think that ties into Picard as well, because I think they were focusing on Romulus and the many billions of people, and not maybe the few Federation planets that were like, hey, I'm not so sure about this, because I think even in the novel it said that there were, or maybe even Picard, it said there were 14 planets that wanted to secede because of this, So it's the pressures were interesting, and why they were doing that, I'm not sure we don't know yet.
Classic collapse of empire. It's too big.
And it's I think also kind of the whole kind of running short of dilithium is I think that's a nod towards the kind of the peak oil theory, right?
Gods, yes.
A similar sort of situation going on there is that it's never really been treated that way in any other Star Trek shows. The idea of that dilithium was a finite resource, and we're told, I think it is in TNG when they introduced a kind of recrystallization technology. Yeah. But it's like, you still need some. You can't artificially make dilithium. You still need to have some. So you could imagine that there would come a point where if the Federation became so huge and had so many starships, that it would start to become a valued resource.
But the ultimate breakthrough would be replicating dilithium, right? If they could do that, then that would hopefully help. But still, you have to get the energy for the matter-antimatter reaction to make it somewhere. So, yeah, it's finite at a certain point, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
With us talking here about this finite resource, I wonder if we're going to, I don't think this will be the case, but I wonder if the fact that we were starting to run out of dilithium may have been the cause of the burn. Because maybe, we know that dilithium has all these weird properties. What if, like the mycelial network, dilithium has this, some type of connection to all other dilithium, and we got to the point where there wasn't enough dilithium that to sustain that, which caused the burn as a result of not having enough dilithium. I don't know. What do you think about something like that?
I'm not going to dismiss it out of hand, because you've had some things that I've dismissed that have come true. So, but
that's crazy talk. Yeah,
yeah, maybe. I don't know. I mean, but I think that's the good thing about what's going on this season. I don't think we're definitive. Oh yeah, we definitely know what's going on with the burn or what's going to happen. I don't know yet.
Yeah.
I still think Michael Burnham is going to go back in time and cause it.
That's crazy talk.
Could be. Well, we've talked about some of this already, but let's get into the Takal and Ket, which to me just felt like a PhD defense where they also insult you personally.
Do they?
for those of us out there that have dealt with defending a thesis or a dissertation, that's the look in Burnham's eyes was familiar.
Is this how you're going to proceed in the future when you're giving your students their final exams? We now have to do the Takal and Ket.
You need a giant gong that sounds great.
Yeah, and torches. And
yeah.
I don't have. We have to meet in face to face again before I can even think about doing that. Can you have it Takal and Ket over Zoom?
I'm sure. You can have a virtual gong and a virtual background with torches. Sure.
I insult Justin all the time over Zoom.
Well, okay. That's different, but so as I was saying earlier, this whole the fact that they're so reticent to give the information really does remind me of the Vulcans that Archer was dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
We're not gonna. No, we don't trust you. So what do you guys think about that? James, did that strike you, or am I completely off my rocker here?
No, I think there's definitely something in that as well. And referring back to again to Una McCormack's book, my colleague Una's book, The Last Best Hope, she does a thing where she talks about the differences between different scientific cultures in the Federation scientific culture and the Romulan scientific culture. And in that book, the subject they're talking about is the oncoming Romulan supernova. But I think it's still germane to this, is the idea that certain cultures jealously would guard their scientific information because not through strategic reasons, but through kind of the idea that it just boils down to, we just don't think you could handle it. And I think there's always been that idea, as you say, from the whole thing from the Enterprise era, is the suggestion that the Vulcans were looking at humans and going, well, we could have given you warp technology on the first day we met you, but we just don't think you're up for it. We don't think you're capable of getting there yourselves, and we're not going to help you out. And I always found that very interesting, and I don't think that's ever gone away with the Vulcans. And so maybe what we're seeing now is, all these hundreds of years later, is we're seeing that thread rising back to the surface is them saying, that the other races of the Federation, you don't have the control and you don't have the sort of seriousness to handle this information. So we're not going to let you have it. And of course, there is the other possibility as well, is that there's something in there they don't want other people to know. Yeah. Is that maybe there's some other thing going on, something we haven't seen yet, and the reason they're hiding this is not just because they don't trust us, but because there's some other unknown factor that will reflect badly on Vulcans and Romulans if it is revealed.
It's such a silly thought. It's like the perfect Plomeek recipe is what takes down everything. It's just too perfect. But like it's interesting you say that, because I hadn't thought about it in terms of Enterprise. But like when I think of Enterprise, you think of, at the beginning, the Vulcans seem more emotional than we're used to seeing them, or more hostile to humans, or they're really not giving things out that humans feel they should. And then if you get to the Vulcan arc in season 4 and how all that gets resolved, and they've found the oh my god, I can't believe the Kirshara, right, with Sirach's original teachings, and T'Pau takes over the council and all of that. Like, actually, then they get into like a more hands-off position for a little while, because I think even later in the season, it's like the Vulcans can't send us ships to help us anymore. So it's almost like they're going back to something where they're just saying, like, we need to be hands off. We need to just like do our own thing because we don't see the merit or usefulness of this Federation anymore, because, look what they had us do. But yeah, I think we're going to find out more about what actually happened in that experiment. It does seem like there's something they're hiding, but I'm not sure what.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maybe they're hiding that they don't actually know.
But if they didn't actually know, why like if they hadn't convinced themselves in some way, why would they say it was their fault? Because there's some other reason they wanted to leave the Federation, and this is like the manufactured reason for that, or I don't know.
Oh, I was thinking on a more petty level that they're just like, everybody thinks we know about this and we can't let them know that we don't.
Oh,
I mean, there's one theme that completely marbles all this season that we've seen repeated again and again and again: trust.
Yes.
In it's something we keep is a recurring motif we keep seeing in this season about every single character is, who do you trust? Is like, Burnham didn't trust Saru with the information about, like, so she took Bookship and she zoomed off and she didn't trust him about that. Yeah. And here we have the Vulcans and the Romulans are not trusting the Federation. The Federation didn't trust Discovery when the crew first turned up. So we keep seeing that note being played over and over again in this thing, and it feels like to me that's marbling the entire season is issues of trust.
I think,
and whether you can kind of regain that.
I think that's true, but I think what also you see throughout this season is the lesson: be true to yourself. And I think there's something maybe that's intertwined with that. Like, in order to be able to trust, you need to be true to yourself. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And maybe there's something in that the Vulcans and Romulans aren't trusting and aren't really being true to themselves. They're trying to be something else in order to try to keep this unified planet together.
Yeah, you definitely see echoes of that. Mm-hmm. I think you definitely see an echo of that in the conversation that Burnham has with her mother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to come back to that, but I want to make sure that if Brandon had anything he wanted to add about these things.
I don't know that there's any. I think that there's going to be something very important in this SB19 data. Like, there's obviously going to be something there that's going to help them figure this out. But I really want it to be that. I don't want the Vulcans to be wrong. Like, I don't know how to put this in a way. Like, the Vulcans to say, like, after this whole T'Kal and Ket thing where they're like, why don't you trust the fact that we know that we caused this thing? And I really want that to be true. I really want that to be true. Because,
I mean, it could be, and for some reason, maybe there's some manipulation going on for Burnham to get this other data that points in a different direction. I don't know.
I don't know. What I'm hoping is that the data that Burnham has corroborates the information that the Vulcans have, but it also enhances it, and so that because she's got both, she's able to figure out more. Like more information.
So, like, maybe
that's what I really want to find out.
It is the Vulcans' fault, but it's because
but it's
they
because
forgot to someone
carry
else
else intervened, or I mean, it could be by Emerald Chain theory. Someone else intervened or did something. I don't know, but that is it is.
It's interesting that they've kind of. It seems like the Vulcans and the Romulans as a whole, or the Navari, I guess we should call them. They've invested so much into being martyrs about this. As it's our fault. We're taking the blame for this. It would be very difficult for them to kind of walk that back. Culturally, I mean, you think of the resonance that would have amongst their own people if they said, everything we believed for the last sort of 100 years about how this was our fault and we're carrying this burden and we're blaming it on outsiders. So in a way, if they truly believe that they were responsible for the burn, they are externalizing the blame by saying, well, the Federation made us do that. So, if the data disproves that or says something different, how would that affect their entire culture? It would expose the lie of that if indeed that is what the data says.
Yeah. Oh,
that's an interesting thing to think about, because I like at that point I don't know. So let's talk about that for a second, because let's say that this SB19 test is the reason for the burn. The Vulcans, Vance said that the Vulcans said we don't want to do this, but the Federation did push them into performing the test. Mm-hmm. So if that is the case, I don't think that the Vulcans would be wrong in saying it's the Federation's fault, because we said no.
Right. But what if it isn't?
Yeah. I do get what you're saying there. What if that's not true? Then they left the Federation for no reason.
Yeah, and that's what they don't want to get out is maybe there was some other cause. They've invested so much sort of time and energy in saying, well, we are the wounded party here because we didn't want to do this and we were made to do it. Now this terrible thing happened, but we're not to blame. What if they are to blame? What if it's the Vulcans' fault?
It makes me think of the term emotional labor, which makes me laugh because of it being Vulcans. But it's also incredibly manipulative on their part, which is what martyrs do. I mean, we've all run into people in our lives like that. So.
I don't know. Maybe the episode was also called Unification III because a time-displaced Sela is manipulating everything.
Possibly. I'd be okay with that.
Would you?
I would too.
I don't know if I would, but... Yeah.
I mean, there's a small point just to make there as well, is that we didn't see any bad Romulans in this episode. It's that all of the Romulans in this seemed pretty reasonable in their viewpoints,
and
understandable.
More so than the Vulcans, actually.
Yeah, and pretty above board and not deceitful like we often see. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so that actually brings me to what I put a pin in earlier. Okay. And it goes along, you guys made me think of something else here, talking about trust. Now, I have here... I was going to see what you guys thought of the idea if Gabrielle was right to call out Michael's state of mind and confused intentions in front of everybody. But then when James was talking about trust, it occurred to me that if you function with absolute candor, you don't have to trust because you know what somebody's going to do, you know what they think, barring outside influence, if somebody says they're going to be somewhere at a certain time and then there's a supernova, they can't be there. So do you need trust if you have absolute candor? So those two things.
I want to first acknowledge how surprised I was that Gabrielle was in this episode. I thought she was going to be somewhere, but
yes,
and also to have the connection to Picard with the co-op Milad, I think was great. But
that was
I think it's an interesting question. I mean, I think Gabrielle, her mother, being kind of indoctrinated into absolute candor and always telling the truth, it helps her to be more perceptive about other people and what they're really going through. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you would always know what someone else is thinking or what they're doing, because maybe they can, put up a screen for that and keep you out. But I mean, I think that being straightforward and truthful does happen in terms of trust, and you could break trust if you're deceitful. I mean, is that kind of what you mean?
Yeah, I guess. But I was thinking, if you live in a society where nobody lies, then you don't have to worry about whether or not someone's actually going to follow through on whatever they've said.
The only issue there is, like, you can imagine if you lived in the nunnery with the rest of the sisters of absolute candor, that would absolutely be fine because everybody there would be telling the truth. But it's when you start dealing with other people
Right.
that it becomes a problem.
Right. Isn't it a Ricky Gervais movie?
I'm gonna challenge you, Chrissy, that like it would be a good society if everybody told the truth, because somebody could be like, the truth is I want to kill you and I'm going to kill you right now, right? Like there has to be.
I didn't say it was a good society.
Yeah, there has to be truth, I think, combined with caring about harm for others. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
I didn't qualify the society at all. I just said, do you need to have trust? Does trust become irrelevant?
Does trust become irrelevant?
Yeah. Is it not? Maybe I'm overthinking
I don't know.
this.
I mean, I think it's still important, because you have to have the continued trust that everybody around you would still be telling the truth, and you'd still have to be on your guard, because, you know, if it's a whole society of people, there's going to be temptation or change or whatever. Like, I think you still need to see how people are right now and whether you can still trust them in every moment, I think.
Yeah, and it's not a whole society that's like this. It's just a small group of people that operate this way. Right?
It is. But even so.
I'm overthinking it. This is the kind of thing that when my students come to me with these questions, I say, well, that's the kind of thing you solve in a dorm room at 2:00 in the morning with mind-altering substances that have been recently legalized in Michigan.
Oh, is that what you recommend to your students?
I actually do tell them that. I don't recommend it. I said that's the kind of thing that you might do. I teach most of the community colleges, so there's no dorms. Anyway, so let's get back to Gabrielle then. Do you think it was right for her to call out Michael's state of mind and the fact that she was confused?
Okay,
Did
I want to talk
help
about this.
Or harm the cause?
I'm not sure. Okay, so this is one of the aspects that I had a problem with the episode. So I love the episode, and I think Gabrielle Burnham is amazing in this episode, and she is the best part of this episode. Her acting is spot on. It's wonderful. The music is fantastic in this. I think it's nonsense that she showed up in this way. Like, just randomly, she was hammered into this plot in an unbelievable way, is what I mean to say. Like,
I think it's a little convenient, but it works for me.
Yeah, it works despite the flaw of her showing up in this way, right? So she showed up on SL4, and the colonists brought me to the Coat Malat who healed me. So there was Coat Malat on SL4 when she came to the future, and then she just decided to move to Navarre and become a warrior nun. I don't know.
Well,
Sure,
it's a good
things have
cover
changed
for
in
her.
SL4.
Because, people are not going to go in and say, hey, you're 930 years ago.
Right.
Why are you here?
But with regards to her bringing this out, I don't understand the relevance. I've watched this 4 times. I don't understand how this is relevant to the inquiry. Because at the end of it, she's like, you're not being truthful to them about this, but it's not about Burnham's feelings about Starfleet. It's supposed to be about the data and the information, which Burnham's like, of course I'm prepared for this, which she's not. She's completely not prepared for this situation.
Well, she is prepared, but they just dismiss everything that she's prepared for, which is presenting her data. They're like, that's not important. Here's the other thing.
Right, because they said to her, it's not important because we've never disputed that there's an origin to this.
But here's the thing that I think we're told several times in this episode. It's not necessarily really about the scientific inquiry and the data. It's about the different people that are there finding ways to defend the point of view that they already had, right? And they're going to try to assail your credibility. So it's very much about personal subjective things and personal opinions and trying to defend them. So what ends up happening is Gabrielle pushes her to actually be completely truthful with them, and she says, like, the audience isn't just these 3 people that are part of this quorum, there's someone else, and the audience turns out to be the Vulcan or Navarre president. And I think Gabrielle has perceived that the way to get through to that is for her to be completely truthful, and I think that works. And it's not what wasn't important was the data or the scientific inquiry or anything like that. What was important was demonstrating in some way complete truthfulness in a way that they feel the Federation did not. And once that has been demonstrated, they feel like they can go ahead with it. So it worked for me in where she was going with it.
I mean, I'd like to just jump in here and say, when Gabrielle steps down off the transport and she reveals just pulls that hood back. I turned to my wife and I said, they're putting everything but the kitchen sink in this episode. was my reaction, and I was like, what? And I was kind of wrong-footed by this because I thought this feels like a bit of a stretch to have this character parachuted into the story. But then when I got to the end of the episode, I realized it could not have been anybody else. Because, think about it for a second. Imagine if it was just another Quoat Milat sister, just a generic one who just happened. They said, "Oh, you've been assigned this job, right? Come and talk to this person." The story would not have played out with the same kind of resonances. Even if that character had said the same things to Burnham about, you're not being honest about yourself. For starters, that character would not have had the familial connection, would not have had the depth of connection that Gabrielle has with her daughter. So she would not have been able to bring that thread to the surface. So even if the character does feel like it's a bit of a sort of record scratch moment when she suddenly appears, when you look at the end of the story, I think there's no way it could have been anybody else, because nobody else could have got Burnham to explore that question that she's being asked, which is like, where do you really fit? What is your truth in this moment? And that is a microcosm, I think, of what this story is about, because, Burnham goes into this and she thinks she has all the answers. She's the sister of Spock. She knows what she wants. She's going to go there. She's going to get this information. It's all going to work for her. Everything's going to go right for her, because it always does. And then she goes into the situation and the rug is pulled out completely from underneath her, because first of all, she gets denied what she wants. And then her mother is challenging her on her very beliefs. And she's forced to acknowledge a truth which she hasn't really been looking straight on at, which is, where do I fit in this world? What path am I on? And at the end of the episode, when she has that conversation with Book on the ship, and he says, you're not leaving, you're staying here. And she has that moment. You say she knows where she is. She knows where she fits now, because she's gone through this experience. And that's the personal arc that Burnham takes, I think, through this episode.
I agree with you 100%, James, that it's a hammered in plot that she's there, but it wouldn't have worked without her. I absolutely agree. That's why I said, it works in spite of this weird hammering of her mom in the plot. It wouldn't work with anybody else, that's for sure. I mean, we didn't get a lot of time to predict who do we think it was going to be, because it's 20 seconds after they say this person's coming, we had her, right? So it's not like we'd be like,
yeah. And I had this moment, and I was like, who could that be? Is it somebody that's somehow a descendant of Spock or Sarek? Or
that was what I was expecting.
I didn't even know where to go. Yeah.
Yeah, that's when we found out it's actually a descendant of Spock and Savik's child.
Yeah, there we go.
And we get that plot line connected. No, it never happened.
That would have been.
That's a hole in that whole story that we have not had fixed.
That would have been an interesting idea if it had been Savik's great granddaughter or something like that. But again, even if it was a character who had a kind of thematic connection to Spock, they still would not have had the resonance that Gabrielle has, because she can anybody could question Burnham about what are you really thinking, what's really going on, but the fact that it's her mum shortcuts the whole sort of getting to know you of it, right? Because if it was a completely new character, this person would have to talk to Burnham, and Burnham would have to kind of come to a conclusion, that this is a person who's very learned, who understands me on a certain level, and we have that connection. And all of that is immediately just done in one go, because it's her mum. So you immediately go, okay, well, I buy the fact that this woman knows all about her because it's her mother.
Yeah.
And that immediately allows you to kind of cut to the chase about the actual kind of emotional core of the story.
The only thing I will say there is that her mother does not actually know her. She knows who she was until she was 10 or whatever age, and then she has the brief experience with her.
Well, not true, because she was following her through time and watching her do all these things when she was the Red Angel, so she did witness a lot of her life.
Okay, nix that. Never mind.
The only thing I didn't like about the Takalanket is, for me, going back to Amok time, I would have liked to have seen this down on the planet. I don't get why it was on the ship. I think we should have had it on the planet, but that's neither here nor there.
It's funny because I didn't even think about that. I was just so excited to see them, and I was like, I don't know. Yeah, they're gonna do it on the ship. I don't know. Maybe because they want to just keep it to a small group of people and not make it a big thing on the planet. Was my thought about it.
It's a bottle episode. It's I mean, I'm going to go out and I don't know about the budgeting for the show, right? But it's that episode took place mostly on standing sets. So in terms of of how much money you had to spend on that episode,
I think it was 100% on standing sets. I don't think they had to build a new one for this one.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think. I can't remember if there were any new locations.
It's all on Discovery and Bookship, I think. Well, in the Federation headquarters, which we'd already seen. So
yeah. But I loved.
There's a political aspect to that. Sorry, I'll come back to you, Brandon. But I don't think that anybody outside of that small circle knew that she was there. Because can you imagine the outcry if Spock's sister has returned, having traveled through time, and now our government is not giving her what she's asking for? So that's why it wasn't on the planet. Because you
having
can't
it on the ship
risk anybody knowing.
Is a way to just keep it among a small group of people. Yeah,
that's a very good point. Yeah, I mean, you could imagine if we go with the whole idea of, like you were talking earlier about the Cyrenites and the idea that there might be a Cybokian faction, then there would probably be a Spockian faction as well. There would probably be, Spock would be a revered figure. There would be people who would emulate him, and
the Spockan aliens.
The Spockan aliens, right? And those people would revere Michael Burnham in the same way that, say, like, Bajorans would revere Jake Sisko as the son of the emissary, right?
Yeah.
Would be, they wouldn't be the core object of reference, but they would be somebody who they would have a lot of great sort of esteem for. So I think you imagine if Michael Burnham turns up on the planet. I mean, you could see a little echo of that when Vance says, you have to be the one to go.
Yeah.
And he knows how much her presence has value, even if she doesn't at that point in the story. Mm-hmm. And I think his reaction saying, we're going to send you because you are Michael Burnham, you're the sister of Spock. He probably knows exactly what kind of problem that would create if she step foot on, the shuttlecraft lands on the outskirts of Shikar, and she comes out, and there's a whole crowd of people who've all come to see her, and what kind of political problems that would create for the Vulcans and the Romulans if that happened.
Yeah.
Brandon, sorry, I talked over you.
So one thing I loved about this episode, I really loved that it kind of turned it on its head in that Michael didn't get what she wanted in this one, and she had to be humble, and she had to pull herself back and say, you know what, I'm withdrawing my request. I'm not prepared for this. I can't prove my case. So this is what I'm going to do, is I'm going to continue to be the scientist. I'm going to continue to look for data, and I'm going to share that information with you willingly. That was the right thing to do in this episode. It felt wonderful. Yes. And I loved that end to the episode because it was very frustrating. James, you probably don't know this. I'm not a big fan of Michael Burnham as a character. I don't really like her as a character in the show. It was very frustrating to have another episode where the only possible person who could possibly do anything to resolve this situation was once again Michael Burnham. She's the only one because she's Spock's sister. She's the only one because she knows Vulcan culture and she can bring in this to Cal and Ket. She's the only one who can possibly do this because over the last 130 years of this, nobody could ever bother to break into the Vulcans, and nobody's able to investigate this at all. But here comes Michael Burnham to the rescue. So I as a person who doesn't really like Michael Burnham, I really like that twist of how the resolution happened.
And I have to say, as someone who does like Michael Burnham and considers him to be my favorite character on Discovery, I like that as well because, I think things have been set up so that it's like only Michael Burnham can get there, but actually, having the humility, withdrawing the request and saying, you know what, I'm just going to find more data and send it to you and leave it there. And in the end, it's not really Michael that resolves the situation. It's the Navarre president, Tarina, who's like, okay, I have something I want to say about this, and because of what I've seen, here you go. I'm going to be the one to help out. It's not necessarily because of you, but it's because I've thought about it more, and here you go. So, I like that a lot.
And also, I think, just to add to that, Justin, is I think that Saru's influence in this story is like, he all through this episode, he kind of projects a very kind of quiet power through this story.
Yes,
that sort of soft power approach where he just kind of turns up and he's like, I'm not going to bull my way through this. I'm just going to kind of say, here I am. I'm reaching out. I'm offering you this hand, and I'm not going to force it. And, you can kind of come along or not. And he brings her around. And I think that Saru's kind of, Saru takes the gentle sort of soft power approach, whereas Burnham is going in there kind of all guns blazing because that's what she does. And you see, strong resonances to the core of who those two characters are both being played out in that episode. Is the gentle touch approach of Saru, I think, does a lot.
Yes,
but it's because it's kind of like it's in the background. It doesn't feel like as big a moment.
Yeah, I love that because I wanted to talk about that as well, because there are multiple scenes between Saru and Tarina, and I love that at one point Tarina is saying that they've had I think Saru's hoping like they can open some diplomatic channels and help out, and Tarina's like, well, it's going to take more than just one visit. There are a lot of different things that are going on here, and Saru says, I'd love to hear about them. Just like that simple thing of like, I want to listen to what you have to say. And like all of the scenes that they had, I loved. And it was actually to the point where I was actually having a discussion with my wife about it after the episode, because she's a big fan of Saru as well. And it's like, he's doing something that feels, that he's being a Starfleet captain who isn't just kind of like going in there with like all the power and all the force like you might see some other Starfleet captains do. I think you're right, James. He's doing it like with quiet power, with humility, gently, and all of that. Then there's something that I really love about that. And during this episode, I was like, I really love what's going on here. I don't know, maybe Saru's my favorite character because the stuff that he's doing here and where he is now, and the arc from where he was at the very beginning of Discovery as the person who was ruled by fear and wouldn't do these things. And now he's gotten to the point where, you could actually say that he helps to influence the important resolution of the situation by these talks he has with Tarina. And it's not Burnham necessarily that is 100% like doing the resolution, I think is wonderful. Like, and I think like, in the episode, like, you think of the big things, like there's this T'Kal Ket, and you see Ambassador Spock, and, there's all of this stuff going on. But really, like, I think when I rewatched it, the heart of the episode is actually the conversations between Saru and Tarina, which was great. Because it didn't catch me that way the first time. It was subtle.
Yeah. I mean, there's a, you can see this resonating through, from the beginning of the beginning of this season, is that Saru's stepped up into being this captain role, and he's kind of found the pace of what makes him the Saru captain, as opposed to like the Kirk style or the Janeway style captain or the Picard style captain. And his style is this quiet power, is this sort of quiet nobility, this honesty, and he's growing into that. And we're seeing it more and more. If you see the way he reacts to the way he is with the sort of like the B plot of him talking to Tilly about like, deciding that I want you to bring you up to become first officer, and the way he approaches her with that situation, and then the way he is with Vance. And in previous episodes, we see how does he command? What is his style? And his style is this sort of just gentle, quiet kind of presence.
Yeah. And I think, one of the things, again, as I was talking to my wife, that we identified is, Saru is the first non-human captain of a main ship we've seen in Star Trek, right? So maybe there is something about like him being a Kelpian or him being different, and what we've seen with human captains is, maybe a little bit different, and this is a different style, but one that works too. Anyway, I thought it was just wonderful, and I'm as much looking forward to see where Saru's journey goes as anybody else.
Yeah, I can't add much more to that. I wrote down here that the scenes with Saru and the Vulcan president were the best in the episode, and for everything that you've said, I'm loving Saru's growth, and this was just wonderful. And I think that Saru's going to end up, by the end of this show, he's going to end up as a diplomat of some kind.
Ooh, so, Ambassador Saru.
That's exactly what I was thinking too.
Yeah. That would be awesome. Oh yeah. Okay.
Saru's my favorite character on the show, and this just continues to show why I just love him. Doug Jones is amazing, and really as an actor, I think he's just fantastic.
I think it's going to be interesting to see though if we see him get put in a situation where the soft power doesn't work, because that hypothetically speaking, putting him in a situation where he has to kind of like do something a bit more.
But he can do that. We've seen him many times, especially with Georgiou this season, where he's able to stand up and give the hammer when he needs to. He can stand up and he can be aggressive when he has to be.
But actually, I think, James, we have seen where the soft power hasn't worked, because in the previous episode where Burnham wanted to, run off and do this thing, and Saru was like, you know what? No, just giving like a gentle no, and not being firmer about it, and that didn't quite work out. So I don't know.
Yeah, but that's more because of Burnham than him.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking more along the lines of, him having to sort of, lock phasers on someone and blow something up. That kind of much. It's it being put into a much more.
It's funny you say that, because I'm trying to think the entire series. I mean, like all the seasons of Discovery. Like, have we even seen Saru like fire a phaser at anybody? I don't know if we have, or to fight anybody hand to hand or anything like that. I don't know. If we have.
When he was on CV Pacem Parabellum.
Oh yeah,
that's true. But he was under a different influence.
Yeah.
So, okay, so maybe
and then
not.
He shot the things at the bow.
Yeah, the spikes. That's true.
The spikes at the bow.
Yeah, the spikes. Okay.
And in this season 2, he shot the spikes in the second episode.
Okay, so no phaser shots at least, maybe.
No phaser shots yet.
But it doesn't tend to be his go-to like it might be for somebody like Burnham or Giorgio or something like that. Yeah.
I still think that's worth seeing.
I think that's the thing, is that's what makes those two characters, interesting. Is I always go back to when I talk about the original series, is if you look at the Kirk, Spock, McCoy triumvirate, right, is Kirk is Spock represents the sort of like cool, logical, methodical approach. McCoy represents the emotional, hot-headed, human approach, and Kirk is the kind of synthesis of the two. And together, the three of them are almost aspects of one character. So if you think of those three different traits, that's actually kind of a synthesis of everything that every person has inside them. Is we have our emotional reactions, we have our cool intellectual reaction, and we have that way of finding the synthesis between the two. And I think that's one of the things that makes Kirk, Spock, McCoy such great characters that still resonate all these years later, is because they have that. We can all empathize with that idea. And I think we see an echo of that with Saru Burnham, is that Saru is the sort of kinder, gentler, thoughtful person, and Burnham is the sort of gung-ho, get your hands dirty, get right in there, down the torpedoes, full speed ahead type. And it is the synthesis between those two characters where they find a way that is not one, not the other, but kind of the middle path. That's interesting to see how they solve the problems put in front of them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right, Justin. I think this is the best episode of the season.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, we can agree on that.
I'm there with you. Well, there was a little bit of activity aside from the T'Kal Ket and everything that was going on around Michael.
Mm-hmm.
What do we think of First Officer Sylvia Tilly?
I want to first say, didn't you predict it, Brandon, last week? And we were like,
sure did.
No.
He did.
But congratulations, you got it right. I am not going to doubt you as much. You were right. But what do you think, knowing that you're right?
Okay, so I'm going to go back on my journey with Tilly. So in season 1 of Discovery, I really loved Tilly. The last 2 episodes of season 1, I didn't, because they started to make her comedic relief. And I'll reiterate this. People were telling me, calm down, Brandon. It's only a couple of jokes. And I'm like, no, they're going on this new road with her. And they did it, and they went all in on season 2. And you may disagree with me, but it was the wrong decision. It was a terrible, terrible decision what they did with Tilly in season 2. It was terrible. It was cringeworthy every time she was on the screen. And I came to hate her character. I despised every second she was on the screen in season 2.
Whoa.
Despised. And episode 2 of this year, I said, I see a growth story happening for Tilly. And I'm liking what I'm seeing off of this first episode. And they've been building on that in this season. They've toned her comedic elements down. They're still there, like they were at the early part of season 1. Okay, she had some humorous elements in the first part of the season, in season 1, and we're getting a little bit of that here. And so this, to me, while I don't think it's the right decision, quote unquote, in universe because of how young she is versus how much experience she has, it's naturally the right decision for the story that they've been telling here and the growth arc for this character. I think she's going to do fine. There is no way in hell this is a temporary situation. Can you imagine the internet uproar if they pull back a first officer position from a powerful woman who can completely be capable of this, she's first officer until they make her captain at the start of next season, okay? Because she will be captain by the next season, I'm sure of it. So
okay. I'll say that I won't dismiss you out of hand, but I think it's unlikely she'd be captain by next season. But there's no way they're taking away. There's no way this is a temporary position. No, I don't think so.
So, but again, I like it, and I'm liking what they're doing with her in season 3, and I'm very, very happy about that because I'm liking Tilly a lot again, and I'm liking her as much as I liked in season 1. She's not my favorite because it's still Saru because he's awesome, but I'm loving what they're doing with Tilly right now. So.
Oh, nice,
good,
nice,
yes. All right, James, any thoughts on our new number 1?
I thought it was an interesting sort of situation to put her in. The one thing I would have done is give her a promotion.
Yeah, I expected Saru to be like,
she'll be a lieutenant.
But I expected Saru to be like, if you accept this, I'll also bump you up to lieutenant. But you don't have to change ranks to become first officer.
Can't tell her that from the get-go because then you don't know if she'll actually take it for that reason.
That's true.
I mean,
fair point.
I mean, I would have. My first reaction was like, you can't make an ensign first officer. She's too low in rank, right? This doesn't work. I mean, I'm thinking she'd need to be at least lieutenant grade. And then I thought, well, we don't know the way that Starfleet regulations work in the new timeline, and it's captain's prerogative, right? So if he wants to make her first officer, then he damn well can, right? Because he's the captain. Mm-hmm. But I thought, well, that's fair enough. And then when she takes the job, I would have said, okay, and by the way, here's an extra pip for you, right? Mm-hmm. Lieutenant Tilly, right? Because I think that would have been fair enough.
Maybe they'll do that next episode. I hope so.
I was going to say that'd be a great opener for next episode.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure
Saru wasn't in engineering for the whole take it, say yes thing.
I mean, it's nice to sort of like see, all of. I wouldn't have expected anything else from this show and these characters, other than them to sort of all stand behind her and go, we're all behind you, because there's two ways they can go. Is right. Either it's all kind of like we're all one big happy family, and we're all 100% behind you, or there's one person who's kind of resentful about it. But the fact is, and I mean, I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here, is we don't really actually have any other characters who could really have an opinion on this, because all of the sort of bridge crew characters is we really know hardly anything about them. And this, I think, has been a failing in the season so far. We got kind of hints of this when we had that whole kind of plot line with Detmer.
Right.
And I was really thinking, all right, there's still time, right? There's still time to do this. I feel like I want to see more of that. I want to know more about the supporting characters as well as our main cast members. I want to see a little bit more of an inner life for them. And maybe we could, if we'd had that earlier on, you could have had one of like maybe Detmer going, well, I think it should have been me. And maybe that being something that would cause tension between the characters later on, and that might have been interesting to explore. But that's not the direction that they're taking it. But I still feel that we need to see more about those junior bridge officers.
Sure.
But I'm going away from the question. So you're fine. But the core question is, right, is Tilly ready for this? Probably not, but I think that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. Is I think that this is, as we were saying earlier, as Brandon was saying, is I think that this is a step on her journey. It's like, she's been pushed outside of her comfort zone, and that's a good thing because it's going to help her mature and it's going to help her grow, and she's going to be pushed to do stuff that she wouldn't normally do. Mm-hmm. And I think she's definitely got the capabilities of doing it. Where she goes from here, that'll be interesting. I mean, it would be interesting to see if she succeeds or even if she fails. That also would be an interesting thing, is maybe she finds herself in a situation where she says, I'm not ready for this, and she voluntarily steps down. That would be an interesting situation, because it kind of, I guess in a way, it would almost mirror what Burnham does in this episode is this isn't working for me. This isn't the right thing. I'm going to step away from it. However they play it out, I think it's going to be, Tilly is going to grow as a character no matter which way this story plays out in the upcoming episodes.
Okay, I guess I'll give my thoughts. So I think when I was first watching the episode, I was a bit surprised, even though you had predicted it, Brandon, because like Tilly says, I'm an ensign, and like the interaction that Saru and Tilly have is really interesting, because Tilly's like, I'm an ensign, I don't have much experience, and Saru says, well, you've had this experience of going to the future and all that. Of course, in the back of my mind, I'm like, so is everybody else on the ship?
Yes.
And like they go back and forth, and I think what it comes down to, and Tilly does ask the interesting question, like, are you doing this because like, you really believe in me, or that I'm compliant? Which is
a
an
good
interesting question because, but like in the previous episode, there was this kind of contrast between Burnham and Tilly. Saru was like, no, don't do this. Burnham goes off with Giorgio and does the thing, right? And then he talks to Tilly, and she's like, you just have to tell the Admiral, Right. And Saru, I think, says, no, I don't think you would have done something like this. So I think, for me, Tilly has been an interesting character since the beginning, because I think when she was first introduced in the 3rd episode of season 1, I wasn't quite sure what to make of her, because it seemed like there was a focus that she was kind of, nervous and unsure of herself. But I thought that was actually really interesting. And there are ways in which she's very competent at what she does, but she deals with, issues and anxieties like a lot of us do. So I thought that was really great. I think, like, by this point, she has been through a lot. And I think, even in that episode where she was introduced, she tells Burnham at the end of the episode, I'm going to be a captain one day. So she has these aspirations. She thinks that she can do more than she's currently doing. So, but when I was thinking about it, I was like, yeah, it actually makes sense it would be Tilly, because as you were saying, James, we don't know as much about some of the other bridge officers that all outrank her, I think. And then you have somebody like Stamets, who's a lieutenant commander, but he probably wants to stay in engineering, isn't interested in command and all of that, right? Yeah. So in a certain, like, story way and what we know, it makes sense. But also Stamets' reaction was interesting, because he was kind of like, well, that's weird and disturbing. And I'm like, oh, that's... but then I do like that they kind of come together and they're like, you know what, this is the right thing. I think you should say yes to it. Sorry, I'm rambling a little bit, but one point I want to get to, which I think you had pointed out, Brandon, and was a part of the Trek article that I was thinking about, is that you see Burnham and Tilly in this episode, specifically, when she accepts crying about it, which I think they have done a lot of that, and it does play into some stereotypes. So that's the one thing about this episode where I'm like, I don't know if that was the right choice, because as I was thinking about it,
I turned to my 10-year-old daughter watching this episode. I said, do you think they cry too much on the show? And without batting an eye, she said yes. I'd never asked her that question before, okay, but my 10-year-old daughter thinks they cry too much on the show.
And they do go through a lot, but like, you think of it like they're on duty, they're at work, and I was thinking about it in terms of like, how often do I see anyone at all, like, cry on the job? Like, very rarely, unless there's something really traumatic, like they're losing their job. Yes, but Sorry. I do work from home now, but I've worked in an office in the past, and it's not something that happens, right? People are really focused on what they're doing. So I think that's a valid thing. Like, maybe they shouldn't have gone there, even though it was moving and it made me cry, but
See, but anyway. that's the thing, Justin, okay? Yes, emotional things happen that can cause people to cry, and I believe that this was appropriate for this scene. But here's the thing, they're forcing Burnham to go to 11 in every episode, that I'm just starting to roll my eyes at her when she's crying all the time. And there's times when it's appropriate, and there's times when I don't think that it is. And with them trying to force this much emotion onto us, it's just like, okay, again?
I'm okay with using that as a storytelling device, but it is true it can be too much and kind of not be as realistic. But James, what do you think about that? Some of the emotionality.
I think that I think I've seen this in Picard as well. I think that the newer versions of Star Trek do feel like the emotional level is a lot higher, a lot more intensified. And I mean, I'm probably the worst person to ask about this, because I'm a stiff upper-lipped Brit, right? who thinks all that sort of stuff is, talking about your feelings is terribly American, and that's not the done thing, right? But so I'm probably the wrong guy for this. But yeah, I mean, the thing about it is looking at it from like a writer's standpoint is when you have a character react in that fashion, or actually from a director's standpoint as well, I would say, is when you have a character react with that sort of intensity of energy and emotion, it's a useful tool to have, because it's communicating to the audience, this is an intense scene, and I want you as the audience to feel the intensity of the energy of this scene in exactly the same way that this character is, and I want you to empathize and connect with them. There's a term, I don't know if you've ever heard of mission control syndrome. Do you know that phrase? It's where if you ever watch a movie, like and you see like Apollo 13, right? At the end of Apollo 13, you literally cut back to mission control, and when they land successfully, everybody stands up and cheers, and they hug each other. And what's going on in the movie there is the director is saying, I want you to have this emotion, you the audience. I want you to feel that same degree of triumph. And often you'll get that in a story where, you know, the sports team wins the final goal and the audience climbs up and shouts and hollers, and the movie's going, feel this, I want you to feel this. And this is a similar situation. You know, Burnham is having an emotional, intense response to something, and the director and the writer, they want you to feel the same intensity of energy. And you can overuse it. It's like saffron, right? You know, just a little goes a long way. So I think if we go back to the previous season, the Burnham was just absolutely put through the emotional ringer when she was, you know, chasing after the Red Angel and her mother and everything, and I really just felt really sorry for her. Every episode just felt like she was just being battered by the emotional intensity of the events that are happening. And I think if that keeps on happening, it becomes one note, because you eventually, after a while, you rob the power of that emotional reaction. And it's down to the way that the performance comes, the way, you know, maybe the way that the actress is directed. I think it's all down to that element of the story is how intense do you feel that you need that performance to be? Is it something that merits that level of emotional intensity, or is it something that doesn't?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to think about, and we'll see if they keep doing that or if we think it's overused. But actually, I think one of the more emotional moments was actually seeing Ambassador Spock in this hologram. And there aren't necessarily, I think, as much of like, you know, being moved to tears about that. But as the audience are like, that's how I felt about it, even though for Burnham it was more like being happy or proud. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where they go. It was just the one thing where I was like, I do wonder if they're going to that a bit too much.
I mean, I have to say the two emotional moments in that story that I really liked the most is that Spock, the Spock hologram moment, because I wasn't expecting that at all. I just thought, you know, they're on their way to Vulcan and they're on their way to Navarre, and they know what's going on and everything. But she watches things, and another that's interesting moment in that is that she's sharing that with Book. There's a lot going on in that scene if you kind of drill down into it, because, you know, her relationship with Book is, you know, they've just kind of past a kind of like a kind of leveling up point in their relationship in a previous episode, right? And so they've gone from being, you know, they've been physically intimate with each other, and now she's showing him Spock, and she's like, this is somebody who's very important to me, and she's saying this is who he is, and she shares that kind of moment of sort of elation when she's like, oh, he finally got what he wanted, you know, he achieved this thing. And she shares that with Book, and I think that's a really important moment. And the emotions that she goes through there, I think Sonequa Martin Green just really sells that. And I felt that was a really touching sequence when she just watches that there. And then the other scene that I thought was a really beautiful emotional moment is when they have that final. Again, it's the Burnham and Book scene, is when they're on the ship, and he says, "You're not coming with me. You know, you're not coming with me. Are you going to stay here?" And she has that moment where you can see she's made that decision and she knows where the right place is for her. And it feels to me like that was a sort of beautiful, bittersweet little moment. And I loved those two emotional beats.
I wasn't going to really bring up the whole thing about Book and Burnham finally hopping into the
just a question, like, is Book just going to live in the shuttle bay forever?
That seems to be what it looks like right now.
He's living rent-free in their shuttle bay.
Yeah.
Well, there's no money in the Federation. So.
Yeah, somebody was like, he's living above Burnham's garage.
Yeah. She's let the boyfriend move in.
I mean, I felt like we were kind of saying that was over, though, right? I mean, I got the sense in that scene is that he's kind of like, well, I'm going. Really? Are you coming?
I got that impression too.
Oh, I didn't get that sense. I missed that.
I think he's leaving.
I thought he was hanging around.
And of course, when he goes, he doesn't need to go, right? It's like, you know, we know he's going off doing his kind of interstellar species rescue thing, right? It's like there's no reason why he can't go off and do that, and you know, come back as an occasional guest star every now and then, because there isn't a place for him to be a series regular, unless,
Yeah, I was wondering what he would do. I didn't get the sense, though, that he would go elsewhere, but yeah, maybe.
Well, he's in the main credits as a series regular.
Well, but it's episode by episode, right? Because if he's not in next week's, then he's not in the credits, so,
Because, I mean, right now, Book has, in the last few episodes we've seen him in, he really has had, like, no agency of his own. But he hasn't gone anywhere or done anything. He's just kind of just, like, sat around. And I feel like he doesn't feel like the kind of character who's going to do that for long. He wants to go and do his thing, and he cares about Burnham, but he knows, he's smart enough to know that he's not going to put pressure on her and say, no, I want you to come with me. He's going to let her go and do her thing, and they can both go off and do their own things, and then occasionally cross paths again for exciting adventures. And that to me feels like the logical progression for their relationship.
He's Cassidy Yates to her Ben Sisko.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Yeah,
that would work. Yeah.
So Burnham's going to throw him in jail?
Yeah,
I could see that happening.
The only thing I wanted to say about that is for anybody who has cats, the scene where they're talking in bed and it's all serious needed to end with the cat jumping on the bed.
Absolutely.
Like, on one of their heads, because invariably that happens in life. So.
Yeah. Cats jump on your bed.
They do at inopportune moments. So. Well, I think I'll get into History Corner and then we can do final thoughts. Is there anything that I've missed in
not unless we want to break a record with our episode.
Not unless what?
I think we already have
with the length of the episode.
I think we're close.
we had some 2.5 hour ones previously, but
well, we're close.
So nobody's going to talk about the fact that the book is actually Gary Seven and the cat is Isis. We're not going to have that conversation. All right, fine. Okay.
We did talk we did talk in a previous week. I do think that the cat is kind of like Isis, is actually some sentient being, a queen of some other planet, but maybe we'll find out.
And if he could be like Gary 15 or something like that. Mm-hmm. Like the doctors. Yeah. I don't know. That'd be a whole other level.
That backup doctor may still be around somewhere.
Gary who?
Oh, I was thinking Doctor Who.
I was thinking Voyager, but yeah.
Wrong the doctor. I'm in the wrong universe. All right.
We have a show called Gary Who, and he's the 15th Gary.
Yeah. That'd be crazy if the backup doctor comes by next week.
I hope they do bring him in at some point, but
that'd be hilarious. Anyway,
I could totally see Robert Picardo being game for that.
Kirsten Beyer, that'd be something Kirsten Beyer would pull out.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
All right.
Okay, let's talk about Nixon.
So Chrissy's History Corner. Okay, so this episode in and of itself. The historical context is really the historical context of the original episodes, Unification 1 and 2, and Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country, because I consider that a bit of a trilogy, personally. I don't know about you guys, but I think they all do come together in an important way.
Well, the two-parter was meant to basically promote the movie.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
It came out the week before the movie, didn't it?
Yeah.
A month.
So. Was it a month? Okay. But
it was
close.
Yeah.
That long? Okay.
I had to look it up for this, So getting into Undiscovered Country. Now, most people probably know the historical context of this as being an allegory for the collapse of the Soviet Union, but, it's been 30 years now, so maybe not. The industrial accident that destroys Praxis is supposed to be symbolic of the Chernobyl meltdown, okay? Which, again, I will say, if you haven't watched the HBO Chernobyl series, you need to, okay? And then Praxis is Praxis because it's supposed to bring to mind Pripyat, which at the time it would have for people, now not so much. Pripyat being the city that Chernobyl was located in. So, and the Khitomer Conference and the conference that was supposed to happen before that, which I don't think they ever gave a name, is the beginning of the end of what is presented as essentially a Cold War. Just as the negotiations that were going on around the end of the Soviet Union was the end of a Cold War, even though it had hot spots, okay? We know now there was an actual war with the Klingons, and there were little proxy wars and such, and you can bring on all of the comparisons with Vietnam and Korea and Afghanistan and all of that. But there is this spirit of negotiation and mutual disarmament, And there is an echo of Mikhail Gorbachev and Boris Yeltsin with George H.W. Bush, the senior Bush, and Bill Clinton. And yes, Gorkin is supposed to make you think of Gorbachev. That's in the books, as it were. And some people are saying, wait, what about Reagan and the whole Mr. Gorbachev tear down this wall thing? Yeah, he gets some credit, but it's not in a good way. Reagan's pushed American military spending to such a high point that the USSR could not keep up anymore. And in trying to do so, they created a great deal of hardship for the people of the Soviet Union because so much money was reallocated from public services to military spending. Okay. Those of you who are old enough to remember hearing about what life was supposed to be like in the Soviet Union, the idea of bread lines and that kind of thing, a lot of that comes from that decade of that push, that spending push. A little bit before, too, because of the Afghanistan war. So we have the destruction of the Berlin Wall. This is widely seen as the end of the Cold War. But it's 2 years before the Soviet Union actually collapsed. And here's where we have this weird connection with Undiscovered Country, okay? Berlin Wall falls, I think they start knocking it down around the first week of November in 89, and then the Brandenburg Gate is opened between Christmas and New Year's of 89, and then the rest of the wall is taken down. There's some chunks of it left, and the Brandenburg Gate predated it, so that's still there. But for the most part, it's gone, literally, definitely symbolically, by the end of 89. But the Soviet Union does not cease to exist until Mikhail Gorbachev holds a press conference on Christmas Day in 1991. Okay, and he basically says, okay, Russia's its own entity again. The Soviet Union has ceased to exist. And then he hopped on a plane and went to California, and now he's still alive, and he lives in a house that was given to him by Ronald Reagan. If that's worth anybody. Right, no, that's where yeah. So anyway, but Christmas Day 91 is 19 days after the release of Undiscovered Country. So there's just this wonderful little connection there, and anybody who was paying attention and knew all of that would have felt that connection. I wasn't old enough to know at the time. Only Nixon can go to China. Okay, basically means that because of who Nixon was, there was no question that he was anti-communist. There was no question that he would maybe not give a hard line to China, but he certainly wouldn't be sympathetic to them. Okay. And it's important for Nixon to go to China because the United States had literally refused to recognize communist China after they won the Civil War in 49 until Nixon goes in February of 1972. So that's Nixon has to be the one to go to China. If Johnson had gone to China, there would be some question of, well, he's liberal, so maybe there's some, sympathies there. And so Kirk is Nixon. Only Kirk can go to the Klingons because there is no question that Kirk could be sympathetic to the Klingons. They killed his son, right? So that's what that means. And then about Unification 1 and 2. Now, of course, this was meant as this huge teaser. I have here, this is a bit of a teaser for the movie with Spock saying, perhaps you know my role in the overture of peace with the Klingons. Well, history knows your role in peace with the Klingons. And it's TNG's celebration of the 25th anniversary, and it's the first time we've really had that kind of an acknowledgement and anniversary on screen. It's the first time we've had the opportunity for that. So Unification 1 was released on the 4th of November, and remember, this is these aren't hard dates because it was in syndication. So if I remember from my own life, I think I saw this the week after. And then part 2 dropped on the 11th of November. And amusingly enough, this actually coincided with Boris Yeltsin outlawing the Communist Party in Russia on the 6th of November in that year. So there's just this weird little connection. But Spock's actions echo the Nixon proverb. Only Spock can go to Romulus. Okay? And only Spock can go to Romulus because he has that unassailable reputation with the Federation. You'll note that even though people say, oh, did he defect? Nobody really believes it. Maybe the Klingon, but that's, Captain Kavada. but nobody really thinks that he's defected to the Romulans. Okay. And he has the life experience and the personal experience to consider things that no full-blooded Vulcan ever could. The idea of reunification of those two societies just seems a complete anathema to full-blooded Vulcans. And so because Spock has the experience, positive experience with emotion and an understanding of what that can do for someone, he's the only one that can go. So there is all of this.
By that point in his life, he's had a unification between his human and Vulcan sides, right?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, good connection. Yes. So that's it's perhaps a little tenuous in places, but that's the historical context for what happened to lead into this episode. This one in particular did not have a lot of historical connections in and of themselves. I have to say, just unnecessary, TMI information. This is Unification 1 and 2 at Undiscovered Country hold this like really important place in my life because all of that was centered around the birth of my sister. Okay. I have one younger sibling. I have one older sibling, who I did not grow up with. I have one younger sibling, and there's nobody in between. There's 10 years between us, just shy of. And watching Unification, I had to stay up by myself because my mother was about to burst, right? And my dad had gone hunting because people that live in the Michigan and the area know that November 15th is a holiday. You go hunting. He did. So he was gone. He would go the few days ahead of it and then stay for a week and sometimes bring home a deer. But I stayed up by myself, which was a big deal because it was one, a school night, and two, I don't think I had stayed up that late because it was on at 10 o'clock at night. And I was of an age where you do that, especially without your parents, somebody being awake. And then my dad had been telling me, he's like, Spock's not going to show up until the last 5 seconds of the show. Spock's not going to show up until the last 5 seconds. And I was like, no, they're advertising it. Spock's going to be there. It's going to be the whole thing. It's going to be great. Yeah. And so that was funny because I do remember calling him the next day up at his hunting camp and being like, you were right. And then a month later, my poor mother, 6 days before she gives birth, is like, okay, we'll go see Undiscovered Country. Why? I mean, we all went, but why my father didn't just take me and say, okay, honey, stay home because you're going to explode. Because she was a week overdue or something like that. And she slept through the whole movie. But they made a point of, this was so important to me. And it overshadowed things that maybe should have been more important, that were more important. And then last but not least, because my parents, are the wonderful small L liberal people that they are, believe that you don't hide things from children. So I got to be in the delivery room.
Oh, wow. And you were 10, did you say?
I just shy of 10, shy of 10. And I spent I had the special Star Trek 25th anniversary magazine. And I had the novelization of The Undiscovered Country. And I had that in front of my face in such a way that I had absolutely no idea what else was going on.
Oh, wow. What a memory.
So I spent hiding behind this magazine and this novel, not having, I understood. The birds and the bees had been explained to me, but I did not understand that part of it. So it was just, Chrissy's his personal history corner, a whole bunch of stuff you don't need to know, but I love this episode and everything around it because of that, because it's wrapped up with Nikki, my sister, and all that.
Oh, no, that's great. We appreciate you sharing that.
Oh, shut up. Yeah. Yeah, so, and that almost brings me to tears in a way that's not like Michael Burnham. Right.
Okay.
Next thing on the list.
Awesome.
But anyway, that's where Nixon Comes to China comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Canon connections. Justin, that's usually your...
I didn't have as many as last week, so I'll just try to go through them. I don't know if we mentioned it, but with the Spock Hollow, it says it's from the files of Admiral Jean-Luc Picard, which is a nice connection. Let's see what else, because we talked about a lot of stuff. I don't know if we had talked about this, but when they're talking about, the requests and grievances to Tilly as the new first officer, Detmer goes in and says, the head in my fresher is leaking. And fresher is a term that has often been used in the novels, basically for bathroom for decades. And I think Diane Duane had first used it, and she said she might have gotten it from Heinlein or something like that. But I don't know if they referred to it that way on screen as fresher. So anyway, that was cool, because I feel like I've read it a lot in the novels. The 3 starships that have the black box data, one of them is the USS Yelchin, which is wonderful, named after Anton Yelchin, who tragically passed away back in 2016. There's also the USS Gavnor, which may be a reference to the Tellarite ambassador Gav from Journey to Babel. There's the USS Giacconi, which is named after an astrophysicist, Riccardo Giacconi. So that's cool. I think that is all the connections that I found that we hadn't already mentioned. But so there were some nice things there, especially the Yelchin one.
Yes. All right. So, any final thoughts that we haven't already covered?
Spent. Boy, do we have a lot.
It was great. Yeah. Give me more.
This is a good one. This is a good one. Thursday, yes. Can't wait till next week. All right. Well, James, first of all, thank you for sitting through the Chrissie's History Corner. That I don't know who this person is. I don't know why I'm hearing about this, but that's fine.
No, but I lived through that. I'm old enough to have lived through the fall of the Berlin Wall. So all that stuff resonated very closely with me.
I was just getting to be old enough to be starting to pay attention to what was going on in the world, and
same here. I remember watching it and being like, "Whoa, some big stuff's happening."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, right. James, thank you so much for being part of this wonderfully long discussion today. I hope we have not delayed any of your plans for the rest of your day.
No, this has been wonderful. I mean, as I said at the top of the show, just sitting around, just chatting about Star Trek. There's no chore at all. It's always fun to do.
This is true. And we appreciate you joining us for it.
Thank you so much, James.
Yes. Aside from Dark Veil, is there anything current and upcoming work that you'd like for our listeners to know about?
Well, as well as writing for Time Fiction, I also have my Mark Dane action thriller series, which is kind of a contemporary sort of Jason Bourne, James Bond kind of style action thrillers. And volume 3 of that, Ghost, just came out in hardcover in the US from Forge Books. And the first 2 volumes, Nomad and Exile, are available in the US in paperback. And over here in the UK, the 5th volume in that series, Rogue, that just came out in paperback in the summer. What else have I got out? If you're into video games, the most recent video game Watch Dogs Legion just came out very recently, and I worked on a tie-in novel of that called Day Zero with my good friend and fellow writer Josh Reynolds. So that's just come out recently. Beyond that, nothing I can talk about. I can say, I can hint out that I am working on another Star Trek project that will hopefully be announced in a few months' time. But right now, kind of everything is kind of future is misty and clouded, on that at the moment.
Okay. Awesome.
All right. Well, the fact of its existence is enough right now. Where can listeners find you online? I know you're on Twitter. If you want to.
The best place to find me if you want to just kind of follow up on what I'm doing every day, every week, just trying to post some fun stuff up there, memes and jokes and talking about writing. You can find me on Twitter at JMSwallow, or you can come to my website, which is easy enough to remember. It's just jswallow.com, and that's pretty much the one-stop shop for everything you want to know about me. It's got information there about all of my work, including everything I've done on Star Trek and everything else. There's downloadable sample chapters of my books and a free ebook novella from a Mark Dane series. So feel free to come by and check that out.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Excellent.
Oh, and here comes the part of the show where I never think of good things to say, but... Brandon, where can people find you when you're not looking for reasons to make Burnham and Tilly laugh instead of cry?
You can find me on Twitter at Brandon Matella. You can find me here on the network with a show called Franchise Fatigue, which is all about movies, remakes, and sequels. And we have just finished up our series on the Planet of the Apes movies. And coming out this Wednesday, actually, is our first episode on the Thing series of movies. So we're starting with A Thing from Another World. So that'll be a fun Christmas treat up in the frozen North Wastelands. You can find me on the Nerd Party Network with a show called House of Fincher. We're eagerly anticipating the release of Mank, which is going to be this Friday, which I'm very, very excited about on Netflix.
Nice. I feel like you've been talking about it for months.
I know. I've been waiting and waiting for this movie to come out because we had originally heard it was supposed to come out in October, so we coincided our releases on all those other movies to lead up to October, and then they delayed it for another 2 months because of COVID. But yeah, so next week, actually, we should probably have our episode on Mank come out. So I'm very excited about that. And then it'll transition into House of Nolan, where we cover Christopher Nolan's films. And I'll be recording my episode on The Dark Knight Rises tonight. So I'm looking forward to talking about that. And good evening, an Alfred Hitchcock podcast over on the Fandom Podcast Network. Over there, my friends Chris and Tom and I cover Hitch's films in chronological order.
All right. Well, Justin, where can people find you when you're not advocating for yourself and your ideas in front of a council of Vulcans and Romulans and Vulco-Romulans?
Yeah, you mean my endearing messianic complex?
There you go.
So when I'm not doing that, no, I try not to be too messianic. You can find me on Twitter. I'm at TrekFan4747, where I tweet about nothing but Star Trek. You can also find me in our Facebook group, the Federation Council Chambers, where you can talk about this episode and everything else on the United Federation of Podcasts. Hope you'll join us there.
Yes. All right, and you can find me on Twitter at The Goddess Livia. That is TheGoddessLivia. And there I tweet about Star Trek history and leftist politics. And you can also follow my work in history, along with that of my fellow historian partner, Jason. And that is on our website, historywiththezilagis.org. And Szilagyi is spelled Szilagis. Thank you very much for tuning in to Infinite Diversity. Thank you to our executive producers, Ken Tripp, Tony Robinson, and Zach Moore. Thank you to Zach Tripp for the wonderful theme music and Tony Robinson for the awesome show art. Please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, and please subscribe. If you'd like to reach out, you can find us on Twitter at UFP Earth or our Twitter handle of IDIC Podcast. We also have a Facebook group for the UFP called the Federation Council Chambers, as Justin mentioned, where you can discuss episodes for any UFP podcasts. You can also email us at infinitediversity@ufp.earth. On the next episode, we'll be talking about episode 8 of season 3 of Discovery, The Sanctuary. Until then, peace and long life.
This has been a production of MTMR Media Works.
Before we move on to our next subject, I just want to, because not everybody follows me on Twitter, and I know that I've sent them to you guys as well. I just want to do my two tweets that I've sent recently, because I think they're funny, and that's fine. So I said,
Twitter corner.
There's so much waterworks on Discovery that I've now been trained to go to the bathroom every time I hear the Discovery theme song. And I've also tweeted out a couple of times where I said, I'm not crying, Burnham's crying. Again.
Okay.
So, anyways.
Okay. No.
Both good.